Good evening, everyone, to the July 10th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. If you can all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Shannon, can we have a roll call, please?
Messina?
Here.
Fleming? Here. Ingalls?
Here.
Lutrip?
Here.
Mandel? Here. Rumpler?
Here.
Ward?
Here.
Thank you. Need a motion for approval of the June 12th minutes?
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion. Need a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. At this time, we have public comments, and that is anything that isn't on the agenda tonight. So is there anyone here that wants to speak or address us with anything besides what's on the agenda for this evening? Okay, thank you. Staff comments.
Good evening, Commissioners. We have only one public hearing item for August, so we'll have that item. It's a zone change request up on Emma, and then we'll take some of the time at next month's meeting to talk about East Sherman and give you an update on that and share with you kind of the results that came out of the design studio and the Envision East Sherman Strategy Workshop, and we'll get you copies of those documents. Both documents are online on the city's website and on the project website. And we are also currently working on the scope of work and the marketing and communications plan for the comprehensive plan. So we're working closely with CDA 2030 on that. And we did have a good call today with Community Builders. They're the group that's helping with East Sherman, and they had some great ideas for kind of creative community engagement and for interactive comp plans. So just wanted to let you know we are working forward on that.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get into the administrative item and some of the public hearing items, as I mentioned, there is a sign-up sheet. Everyone has a right to speak on any of the items that are here, but we have quite the full house. Thank you for coming. I'm sure there's opinions on either side, and I would appreciate it if you are going to speak. That's great, but again, if you don't have anything additional to add, different than anyone else has spoken, I'd appreciate perhaps a condensed presentation when you do come up. And also, I'm sure everyone's passionate about their individual thoughts on any of these items that are here, but I would request that no additional comments be made except when you're up at the podium. So I'd appreciate that. And thank you for coming today. So given that, the first item is an administrative item. It's a request for an interpretation of design elements for Tilford Place, PUD-1-17.
Thank you, Commissioners.
You're welcome.
So the applicant this evening is Idaho Waterfront, LLC, and it is an interpretation of the approved design elements for Tilford Place. And it is 1.66 acres along West Tilford Lane in the Riverstone development. This will refresh your memory on the location within Riverstone along Tilford Lane. And this was an approved 13-lot subdivision. Planning Commission approved it October 10th, 2010. So this evening, the applicant is asking for an interpretation to allow more flexibility in the future home designs, and in addition to the approved design concept, that they be allowed to have more craftsman style by permitting the following design elements: variations of roof lines and slopes, allow either 1- or 2-story homes, exterior finish materials that may include shake, lap, shingle, batten board, various types of siding, stained or painted. Allow rock accents on the base columns, and garage doors that could have a barn door style, not required but permitted, and front doors that could be located on either the front or the side of the home. And this is the example of the approved design concept that the Planning Commission saw during the PUD process. Staff looked at these as more of a bungalow style, and here are two examples. And this is another example of the approved design concept for the site. The applicant had submitted about 8 different types of, or styles, as far as craftsman style home concepts. And you have that in your packet as well. And I'll just run through these so you can get an idea of the style of home that they're proposing within the subdivision. You can see that they've added the stone on the columns and siding, shakes. And this last slide is the proposed barn door style garage for one of the proposed homes. So the decision point is the Planning Commission must consider this request to approve or deny the request to allow additional design elements and design flexibility for the future homes within Tilford Place PUD, and that they could have the craftsman style elements that I've pointed out, in addition to the bungalow style that was approved for the project. Will allow the developers and future owners a little more flexibility in their home designs. Any questions for me?
Any questions of Tim?
Is this the first time this PUD, changes to this PUD has come before us?
They came forward a few months back and asked to modify the rear yard setback. The original approval was 15 feet. They asked for a 10-foot setback on that rear yard. So that was the other modification to the PUD.
So this is a second modification to PUD?
It's just an interpretation that we would show a little more flexibility, or you're asked to approve some flexibility in the design for the homes.
An interpretation.
Versus a complete modification of the PUD.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this came to us before, and it was more of a craftsman style, which was going to be all the homes. And given what I read in the packet, the demand for some of the homes have changed from the homeowners, so they want some leeway.
I don't have the issue with that, it's just that the process. Usually a PUD, we approve something firmly,
Right.
and that stays in place for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And to have 2 changes in rapid succession just seems that, in my mind, isn't sticking with the thought of the PUD. You know, think it through completely, and at first, and if there, I certainly accept changes, but not so quickly after it's first formed.
Chairman's correct that they just would like a little more flexibility, and they submitted the 2 plans that were the concept for the design, and then now that the development is all platted, they've recognized that they do need some flexibility, that owners, developers would like to have different designs other than just the bungalow style that was approved.
Can you confirm that in approving this interpretation to extend to include craftsman and bungalow, there are no other effects to the original approval of the PUD?
Yeah, they aren't changing anything other than this,
Okay.
correct?
And the illustrations they're giving us, that's what they're going to be building.
Correct.
Right. And if they change from that, at some point in time, they'll have to come back again.
Staff would, review the building permits as they come in and make sure that the components on the plan that we're reviewing are very similar to what they're asking for and all those design elements that they've included. So we will review that at the time of building permit.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, John.
I would motion that we approve this. My personal opinion is that this is pretty minor. If you look at the little bungalow picture here, I've got a column with a nice tapered detailing and whatnot. I'd call that kind of a craftsman feel. I don't see this as a significant deal. I think the finding that we made initially was that this was an appropriate fit for the neighborhood. And Riverstone is a little bit of a eclectic mix of all kinds of stuff, really, but somehow it all comes together pretty well, and I just don't see it all that significant of a change, if any. So I would motion that we approve.
Okay, any other questions for Tammy? No? Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you.
John, would I take that as a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'm looking for a second.
I'll second that motion.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item I-1-18 is approved. At this time, we're going to start the public hearing. Just give you a little recap how this works. Staff will come up, speak on the particular item. Then the applicant will come up and has 30 minutes to, again, speak on the item. Then anyone who's signed up has 5 minutes to speak, and I'll read your name, and if you wish to come up, then as indicated on the form, come on up and speak. If not, I'll just read what the check boxes say. And then after that, the applicant has about 10 minutes to come back up and address any issues that might have come up when the public testimony was given. And then at that point, I'll close public hearing on that particular item, and then it'll go to discussion for the commission to approve or not approve. With that said, Sean, go ahead.
All right, thank you. So tonight, before Planning Commission, we have a public hearing. Applicant is Sandy Patano. Our current address is 801 South 11th Street. The subject is a deviation in conjunction with a short plat request to subdivide property into lots with less than a 50-foot frontage in an R12 zoning district. The location is on 5th Street, currently addressed as 930 North 5th Street, and it's approximately an acre, 0.99 of an acre. Okay, so the applicant seeks approval of a deviation to subdivide the property in city limits with a reduced frontage. The short plat request would create a total of 3 lots where 1 large lot currently exists. Note that this is in conjunction with a short plat. Staff has not done it this way before. This is something our legal department determined was an avenue for the applicant to request a deviation in conjunction with a short plat rather than a long plat, because it's not more than 4 lots. So with that, I wanted to point out a couple of things. We received some additional information, so before I begin diving into my staff report, I want to point out that the first condition, which is no additional unit exists on the property, or if it does, it would have to come into compliance. Staff has confirmed that the little building to the rear of the property is not a livable unit. It's just a storage shed. Also, the alley that they wish to dedicate to the city and improve is 20 feet wide. So I think I mentioned in my staff report 28 feet. So really, staff and the applicant are prepared to provide an extension of the alley of what already exists at 20 feet wide. And I believe it's 46 foot in depth is what their request is. And then also that there is a lot that we found last minute that was recorded, and I'll get into that in just a second, back in 1904. So there already is one existing lot that is 42 feet wide, and they would be requesting 46 feet wide, so it would actually increase by a width of 4 feet. So with that, we'll move forward. Mouse here. Okay, so this is the location map. This is the subject property outlined in white in 5th Street, almost to the north. Here is, it's kind of tough to see, although I wanted to show in the context of the area. This map is from Kootenai County. It shows multiple subdivisions that have happened over time. This Reed's Acre Tract was the original subdivision in the area. This highlight in red is the subject property. Notice that north is to the right in this case, and to the straight up in this case. All right, so here's the discussion that I was just having with you. This property was subdivided right here with a 42-foot frontage in 1904 all the way across. In 1943, which predates our subdivision ordinance for the city of Coeur d'Alene, a small square was carved off to the rear here. And the total depth of that property is 228 feet from 5th Street all the way back to Lot 1 to the rear of the property. Here are some site photos. This is the existing home, and we're looking northeast at the existing home. This is basically looking north down the existing sidewalk, and these bushes to the rear of the home is where we were talking about. There are a couple of additional photographs in your staff report, although I didn't put them all up here because time is of the essence tonight. So this is the access to the alley which is proposed. This is looking south and would be the only access to the two new lots. This is interior where the alley basically dead ends on the other side of the fence. This is where that 46 feet would drop into the second lot to provide access to the second lot. All right, so to tell this story, I wanted to start off with what currently exists and what is proposed. So this grayed, kind of light blue grayed out area is the existing lot. This is the proposal. So where there is a 42-foot lot now, they are requesting a 46-foot frontage. Proposed lot number 2 would have a 45-foot frontage, and the remainder would be for the existing house. We did receive comment from the neighbor to the south. I wasn't able to identify or locate anything, but there is a shared driveway between this portion of lot 20 noted here and the lot directly to the south. They just wanted to be sure that, I believe it was done many, many years ago with a handshake, that they still maintain access for both and that nobody blocks it off. That was my understanding. If they are here tonight and I am incorrect, they can come up and clarify. Just give us a minute. All right, so the proposed lots will have the following attributes. So lot 1, the farthest one to the north, would have the 46 frontage that I was just speaking about versus the 42 that was carved off in 1904. The depth of the lot will measure approximately 153.5 feet. The square footage of the lot would be 7,061 square feet. And the alley would be added onto the rear of the property, which would access both lots 1 and 2. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the conditions. So this is the example of lot number 1 and the dedication of alley. So lot 2, which is just south of lot 1, would provide a total frontage of 45 feet versus 50. The depth of that lot would be 228.2 feet long and 10,260 square foot. And once again, that rear access would provide access to both lot 2 and lot 1. So the remainder lot would have a frontage of approximately 100 feet. The depth is 228, and the total square footage of that lot would be 22,800 square feet. And the alley extension will not serve this property. They would maintain their access from the existing shared driveway to the south. And that is this lot here. So some staff did meet with them prior to the request being made, and they provided some self-imposed conditions that staff has added to our list of conditions as well. They want to restrict the lots because they are large lots. They could potentially house a duplex based on their size. They want to limit them to single-family detached only. It's also important to note that an ADU may be allowed if the future owner wanted an accessory dwelling unit, but that would also require that the single-family home be owner-occupied. So no street curb cuts for the driveways. They would have to use the alley for their access for the northern 2 lots. And then this kind of illustrates that. So no driveways for lot 1 and 2. There's an existing shared driveway at the south end, alley dedicated to the city that would provide access to the new lot number 1 and new lot number 2 with the potential for an ADU if the new owner wants it that way. So as part of a deviation request, there are findings that need to be made similar to a special use permit or other land use action. So the first one is exceptional or extraordinary circumstances do or do not exist warranting the approval of the requested deviation that does not generally apply to other properties in similar subdivisions or in subdivisions in the vicinity of the proposed subdivision. The staff's assessment is pay attention to your staff report, the presentation that I'm making right now, as well as the applicant and any of the other testimony that you receive tonight. That goes for all three of the first three, with the fourth one being comprehensive plan. We'll get into that in just a second. Finding A2 is that approval of the deviation is or is not necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right of the developer, or is necessary for the reasonable and acceptable development of the property. Third finding is approval of the deviation will or will not be injurious to property in the vicinity in which the subdivision is located. Fourth is approval of the deviation is or is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. This property is located within the historical heart, stable established area. Stable established is areas where the character of the neighborhoods has largely been established and in general should be maintained. Here is the location of that inside of historical heart. I also included historical heart today and underlined the most pertinent portions that apply to this request. A traditional tree-lined, small block, grid-style street system with alleys is the norm in this area, which is the case here. And also numerous residential homes in this area are vintage, and residents are very active in local policy making to ensure development is in scale with the neighborhoods. For tomorrow, increased property values near Lake Coeur d'Alene have intensified pressure for infill, redevelopment, and reuse in the areas surrounding our downtown core. Stakeholders must work together to find a balance between commercial, residential, and mixed-use development in the historic heart that allows for increased density in harmony with long-established neighborhoods and uses. So, the bullet points for the characteristics of the neighborhoods, the one that applied the most in this case was encouraging growth that complements and strengthens existing neighborhoods, public open spaces, parks, and schools while providing pedestrian connectivity. There are some comprehensive plan objectives that I've included as well. These are spelled out entirely inside of your staff report. It's a lot. Largely efficiency, community design are to maintain and protect our neighborhoods. So there are 10 recommended conditions. As I mentioned in the beginning about the additional dwelling unit existing, it does not. Moving on is all setbacks for existing structures must conform to the existing code. Only single-family detached homes may be constructed. That was one of the self-imposed conditions. No private driveways approaches for lots 1 and 2. That was also a self-imposed condition. The alley as well. We did talk to the engineering department, and they have requested that the full alley be graded out and added with 4 inches of compacted crushed base course. Since they're not going to have the driveways, staff felt that that was an acceptable ask to improve the existing alleyway. And then wastewater had some conditions largely to how they would connect to our wastewater line. There is some existing lines, and basically they say they have to use them. And they have the capacity and willingness and intent to serve the project. Any additional fire hydrants would be the responsibility of the developer, and water service cap fees will be due at the time of permit. With that concludes my staff report, if there are any questions.
Quick question, Sean. I'm assuming the trash removal for the larger properties on the front of the front street, but what happens, do they have to use that laneway for trash removal?
It will largely be up to the trash
service provider.
company and how they pick
That's a tricky way to get in and out of that short.
Right, yeah. The trucks generally do not use alleys that do not go all the way through because they do not want to back
Trash will
out
have to be addressed.
a couple hundred feet.
Question, probably on process or legal. We had a comment received from the property owner, and you also mentioned it, that there was some type of handshake between the two property owners. And they were looking for us to affirm that that's valid, or do we have any authority in that area, or that is more of a legal issue, I think, between?
That is between the property owners. The city doesn't have the right to enforce that agreement, but the city does have the right to make sure there's access to both lots.
So when that topic comes up, we had something that was like this, similar to us, before us, about a year ago, and the deal went through without resolving that, and one of the properties was injured in some fashion, they thought, and they didn't catch it at the time it came before us, and so it's my concern is just that the property owners know what our authority is and what we can do and what we can't do. Thank you.
John?
Another chop at that, if I could, and that shared driveway is at the south property line of the existing house that's going to stay. Safe to say, really, that the action here really shouldn't have a bearing on that.
I would agree with that statement. I think that if Planning Commission had the wherewithal to ask for at least a portion, the portion that they're asking for reflect in the plat that is recorded an access on a portion of that, you could do that, but I don't think you can encumber the lot to the south because they're not requesting any sort of action.
Okay. Yes? Go ahead.
The code section, the deviations, and the statement that all of the following facts and conditions exist, and there are 4. That seems, the combination of those seems like a pretty high litmus test, which I understand, but can you give some examples of what, for example, exceptional or extraordinary circumstances would be? Those 4 conditions seems like a very high litmus test for approval.
Right, and there's no real definition that I'm aware of for what those are, so that's why staff, when we put this together, said you would take all of the testimony that's before you tonight and weigh that, based on the testimony that you received tonight.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome.
At this time, usually the applicant is the first one to come up, so I don't know if it's Jack or Sandy or someone else that represents the owner. I can do it. Who? Tom Turgerson? Representing the owner, I take it, Tom?
I hope so. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioners, Tom Torgerson, 4808 Fernand Hill Road.
You don't have to give your address, but thank you. Staff, do I need to swear? Okay. I just need to swear. The statement that you about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioners, thank you. I think, and thank you for pulling, that was exactly the one I was going to ask for. First, I think the most important thing is to calm the concerns of the neighbor to the south. That existing common driveway has been there for decades, certainly prescriptively there. I'm sure that the applicant will be able to, if they wanted to provide, an easement to be drafted, but that's a definitively established, no argument about it. They both need it. So that is a shared driveway. There won't be any access granted from the south, for example, around the backyard to anywhere. It's going to be exactly the way it is today. So that hopefully will calm any concerns with regards to the back area. I think the biggest thing to consider on this, I was born and raised downtown Coeur d'Alene, and I don't want to see people do things that aren't consistent with the neighborhood, and that's exactly what the applicant is doing. All of the lots to the north are 45 feet wide. Most of the lots to the north have alley access. We have a 42-foot wide legal lot that we can take advantage and take a building permit out on today. So then we could simply skip this whole process, have street access for the 42-foot lot, have street access for a 50-foot lot, and effectively we utilize 92 feet of frontage. The only thing the deviation does, it's about 1 foot. A 46 and 45 versus a 42 and a 50. And in respect of the neighborhood, we deed restrict it out of being multifamily to to being single-family dwellings, which is more consistent with the spirit of the neighborhood. And we make people access from the rear, which keeps the street flow nicer. It's a better situation. It doesn't prohibit those 3 probably parking spots from the 2 curb cuts for the approaches. So this is a unique proposal, and the deviation process was potentially probably made for maybe a different situation, but I really appreciate staff, all 3 of them right here, Randy and Hillary and Sean. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how this could or couldn't work. But effectively, we can have 3 lots there, and the definitive differential is 1 foot of distance. With that, the only thing I would ask, I drove down the alley to kind of pay a little bit more attention after I read Sean's report. Adding an additional 4 inches of gravel on that whole driveway, one, again, we wouldn't have to do anything to the alley if we just went ahead with what's legally there. But, I mean, more than happy to grade it out and add some gravel, but it actually I think it would cause some problems to raise that, and certainly to tear down that alley and rebuild the whole thing, I think is a little onerous to do this little project. The portion that, you know, is new, of course, would, you know, I'm sure it'd be built to standard as requested, and certainly grade out the whole thing. But I think that to add 4 inches of gravel, it's actually kind of problematic. But again, Sandy has owned this for a long time. Jack's been here for a long time. It's truly the spirit of the neighborhood, as opposed to cutting off one big lot and doing something multifamily or something that just doesn't fit in the neighborhood. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Or
Don?
Tom, thanks for your presentation. There are 10 conditions. I agree with you. I think the condition from the city engineer, we could wordsmith that a little. I would agree with you. Probably better not disturbing the part that's already there, but wordsmith that to say that the new portion of the alley must be constructed with 4 inches, blah, 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 blah. That said, you know, with respect to the other conditions in here, have you read through all of those? And,
yes, sir.
You're
think
good with all of those?
I don't believe there's anything in there that we didn't discuss together. And I'd certainly let Sandy address that if I'm mistaken. So I'm getting the thumbs up. So.
Any other questions of Tom? No? Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
First person I have is Elizabeth Heckel, and she does wish to speak.
Yes, please.
Start. Oh,
Hi.
hi. Come on up.
Yeah, good evening. So I'm the neighbor that's to the south.
Just state your name.
My name is Elizabeth Henkel. I live at 924 North 5th Street.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I'm saying, I'm the neighbor that's to the south and received notification recently from the city about the proposal. And I came here tonight mainly to learn what was being proposed, and I will say that I'm happy to hear that it's 2 individual houses rather than condo land, which is what I visualized. I did hear 2 different things said about lot number 2 and its access. We heard that the access for lot 2 would be from the alley, that would be theirs, but access into their property. But then I also heard that lot 2 would access it from the existing driveway that lot 3 and we use. So there was a miscommunication. I don't know if that was just misspoken, but I want to be clear that it's just going to be the existing traffic, the residents that live there next door to me in the big house, and my property, the vehicles that we have, and that's it. And it's not a handshake. There's actually written documentation down at the courthouse on the title work from way back when we bought the property in 1987 about that easement. So, okay?
to address those two concerns, Tom can come back and confirm that later, but what I believe I heard is that the two properties on top are going to be access alley only, and the larger piece is going to be with the document that you just said is recorded.
I heard it two separate ways.
All
That's
right,
why
but
I
Tom
wanted
can
to
address that
reconfirm.
later. He'll have some
Wanted
time
reconfirm.
to address that, I'm sure.
Yes, and as far as the handshake is concerned, that's more in dealing with the back end. We allowed the property owners 25 years ago requested to build a storage shed onto that garage carriage house. It's not a residence in the back there, it's a garage. And we agreed to that to allow them to build that literally to the property line, which I know is, but it's in the back, you know, so we didn't really care. So the wall of that building on my side is my property, and the building on their side is theirs. And that's the only deviation, I mean, as far as handshake was concerned.
Okay, the applicant can certainly address that as well, and that's something that, as staff said before, isn't under our privy. You guys work it out. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just want to keep it quiet.
No problem. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Sandra Patano? Come on up. I can't.
Have any specific questions?
Uh,
I think Tom can address them for me now.
Can you come up to the, yeah. Unfortunately, you can't speak from the audience because what you're saying, we can't hear, and then it's not recorded. Sorry, Sandy.
That's all right, Mr. Chairman, members of the
State your name,
Planning Commission. I'm Sandra Pitano, and I am the property owner.
and do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, Sandy.
Well, at this time, I don't have additional comments to make unless you have some specific questions of me. Tom can address them, or I can confer that the access to the two properties on the north side would be from the alley, just as you heard, is what we are proposing.
Okay, great.
And there is an easement. It is a shared driveway. I was aware of that when I purchased the property back in 2004.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Thanks, Sandy. Any
Thank you.
questions, Sandy? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jack Riggs? Hi, Jack.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my name is Jack Riggs.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I will defer till the end and just be part of the closing if needed as a co-applicant.
Okay, that'll be fine. You can come up and set a time later. Thank you. I have Rick Gunther, and he's in favor. Karen Dunmore, she is opposed. Did not indicate whether she wanted to speak or not. Is that, are you Karen? Oh, so you do wish to speak, okay.
I don't really have any further questions. I've seen,
All right.
I'd love to see the
wait,
design.
Wait, please, I need your name.
Karen Dunmore.
And do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, go right ahead, thank you.
Okay. I do have one comment. I'd love to see that alley paved. I am a neighbor, and my comment to that is because of the particulates in the air, and there will be additional traffic on that alley. I live on the other side of Elm, and I know there's not many paved alleys, but it would help to start doing that and cut down on the particulates.
Okay, anything else?
That's it.
All right, thank you.
When do we get to see designs?
That's the owner who would have to take care of that for you. Michelle Brown, and you do wish to speak.
Can I just say I'm
You got to come up to the podium, please.
That or pass.
We're friendly, don't be afraid. Just your name.
I'm Michelle Brown.
The statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
It is.
Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
I didn't have enough information before I came tonight, and I had heard misinformation, so I'm not opposed any longer, and
You're good to
and
go.
it's all good, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Appreciate it. See, that was harmless.
Didn't hurt a bit.
Nancy Scully, and you do not wish to speak, okay? And Neil Scully, and you did not indicate whether you wish to speak or not.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Jack, at this time, if you want to come up, or Tom, you have rebuttal time if you wish
It's an open mic.
to address anything that you heard that.
Tom Torgerson, I don't believe there's anything that was left to be addressed. There were just the concerns about the alley access, and that's what this does. It precludes people from accessing from the street. And in addition, there would be, just to reiterate, no additional traffic through the easement between the two, and I don't believe there were any other unanswered questions, unless I missed some.
Any question to Tom? No? Thanks, Tom. At this time, we're going to close public hearing, and I'm going to look for a motion. Go ahead, John.
I'm going to hold on the motion for a second,
Sure.
but I'd just like to make a comment that Commissioner Mandel is absolutely correct. It's a high bar. It's a tough litmus test. However, in recognition that, this is really a pretty minor request here, there is economic pressure to develop. The comp plan recognizes, quote unquote, the intensified pressure on infill. So I really think that the special conditions here and the exceptional nature, the extraordinary circumstance here is that, economics are going to drive a higher use here, and, all of these taken together, for the preservation of the property rights and the preservation of the neighborhood, without recognition that this is kind of extraordinary circumstances here, we're going to miss the opportunity here, I think, to be respectful to the neighborhood that we heard here and end up with a character that's kind of consistent. There's a lot of 40 and 45-foot lots around there, as there is now. This is different than going out, in a 100-acre empty field and approving a deviation for smaller lots. In this case, it's a little bit of an extraordinary circumstance, or a little bit of a special case. So with that, I'd make the motion that we approve this. I guess I'll muddle through this and we'll see where it goes, but bear with me. It's kind of a lengthy deal.
Hold on,
Yes.
John, we have some discussion still.
Please.
One clarifying question. Are the self-imposed conditions recorded as formal as the conditions by staff? So they're effectively 13 conditions?
Right. They're actually incorporated into the ones that staff
Okay, so they're
has
reflected
written.
in the existing 10?
They are.
As stated?
They're here.
Just remember that number 1 has been proven non-existent.
Yeah, it's in point 3 of planning.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just a comment in support of Commissioner Ingles' motion of approval. I think the commission has had a lot of extensive discussions about infill and the need for additional housing opportunities, single-family housing opportunities in the city. And I would actually hope that we see more of these, that this is actually a very positive thing to do with property within the confines of the city, and is something that I think we've talked about and we expect to see. And I would just encourage the community to support these ideas as I do.
I totally agree with that. I mean, there's an opportunity here that they could have done a number of different things and really just gone ahead and do it by right. Here they restricted themselves to single-family homes, which I commend you on for doing that. So again, we had a motion and some discussion. I'm looking for a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Don't you have to read through it?
Oh, wait.
We need
To
a
record the
motion.
motion. Let's make the findings.
We need the motion.
We have to
You
do
need the
some
findings.
findings on this?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to
jumped.
move
Yeah.
right ahead.
One more
wait.
comment. I mean, there are 4 conditions, and I would say the fourth one, being consistent with the comprehensive plan, is probably the most important for me as a finding. For the conditions for deviation, is that they're the 4 listed. per code, right?
So that's kind of in the crawling through of the findings. But
And I apologize, I back up a step here. So John, if you care to go through the findings on this.
let me, it's a bit lengthy on this particular one. Let me crawl through it, and then we may have some other ideas and such. But so this is a matter that's come before the Planning Commission tonight, July 10th, 2018. And having been at present a person requesting a deviation pursuant to Title 16, Chapter 25 of the Coeur d'Alene Municipal Code in conjunction with the short plat request to subdivide property into lots with less than 50-foot frontage in a R12 zoning district. The commission makes the following findings. The applicants are Sandy Pitano and Jack Riggs. The location of the property is 930 North 5th Street. So the findings that we would have, we would adopt B1 through B3, which are just statements of fact in the findings worksheet. B4, we would make a finding that special conditions do exist. In this case, we talked about the extraordinary circumstances of preserving the neighborhood, respect to the neighborhood. Doing this deviation would preclude, development, say, of duplexes and so forth. So we would make the finding of B4 that special conditions do exist. B5 that extraordinary circumstances or conditions do exist to warrant the approval of the requested deviation. As I think we've discussed up here, that there's this provides for consistency with the neighborhood and a better infill solution. B6, that the deviation is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right. That the applicant would have the ability to develop those as lots as opposed to duplexes.
Single family.
Single family as opposed to duplexes. B7, that the approval of this deviation would not be injurious to the property in the vicinity. It would actually be beneficial. And as you mentioned, finding B8, we have 7 comp plan elements in our findings worksheet that this certainly supports. I would say most strongly it supports 1.14 in utilization of existing infrastructure. It also is very well supported, particularly well supported by 3.09, which is the preservation of our neighborhoods, and 3.11, the historic preservation, again, by approving this, the lots that are similar to the other lots in town, and we'd have single-family housing there rather than duplexes, certainly, I think is well supported by the comp plan. That said, the Planning Commission, pursuant to its stated findings, concludes that the request of Sandy Pitano and Jack Riggs for a deviation as described in the application should be approved with the 10 special conditions, which I'm not going to read, but you can see them in your findings worksheet.
Commissioner Ingalls?
Yes.
You had mentioned earlier that you possibly want to wordsmith.
Oh, yes. I would like to propose with that motion that we change minor wording on condition 5 that would say words to the effect, the new alley extension must be constructed with 4 inches of compact crush base. Thank you, Sean.
You could also admit number 1 and probably the very last one as well, as they're not really a condition.
I think
last wastewater one.
They don't do any harm by being there. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion by Ingalls. I'm looking for a second on this.
Second.
I have a second. Shannon, roll call, please.
Oh, I wanted to.
Oh, go ahead, you.
Add another quick thing.
Go ahead,
however.
sorry.
No, it's quite all right. I just also wanted to point out that I feel that objective 4.01, which addresses city services, I want to commend the folks that are looking to develop this, because knowing the area and the age of the infrastructure and the wastewater system in particular, the requirements that you've placed on the property itself is appreciated, because it'll certainly add to the longevity of that project. So thank you for doing that.
John, are you okay with adding 4.01 to your motion?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Shannon, roll call?
Okay. Fleming?
Yes.
Ingalls?
Yes.
Messina? No. Lutrip?
Yes.
Rumpler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Okay, SS-18-10, a proposed short plat deviation is approved. Thank you. Good luck. Next, we have SP-7-18, a proposed veterinarian clinic special use permit in an LM, which is light manufacturing zoning district. And Mike, go right ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is a public hearing for item SP-7-18, application by Matt DeMarco and Duran Choker, requesting a special use permit to allow a veterinary office in the light manufacturing district on property that is located at 1336 West Kathleen Avenue. Legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on June 23, 2018, and all other required notifications have been made. Here's this location map of the property signifying where it is. It's highlighted in red where it's located. This is Ramsey and this is Kathleen. Here's a close-up aerial photograph of the property. It's an existing facility. The applicant has been entered into an agreement with the city for an access and parking agreement to access the soccer fields to the left and the rest of the city property to the west. There is also an underground pipeline here that the applicant is aware of that's not on their property. Here's a bird's eye view of the property signifying where it's located. This is Kathleen. Here's the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. And the floor plan, how they propose to use the building. There are 3 findings that need to be met in order for a special use permit to be approved. The first finding is finding B8A, that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan indicates this area in the purple area, which is stable established. Stable established areas are neighborhoods where they've been established and they don't change very much through time. The comprehensive plan objectives as it relates to the special use permit, I have 3 located on this slide, but the full list is on page 8 of your staff report. The first objective, objective 1.12, community design. Objective 1.14, efficiency, promote the efficient use of existing infrastructure, thereby reducing impacts to underdevelopment areas. And objective 2.01, business and diversity, welcome and support a diverse mix of businesses. The Ramsey Woodland area tomorrow will be a pedestrian and bicycle-friendly area. Neighborhood service nodes will be located where appropriate, and multi- and single-family housing units will also be located in this area. The next finding is finding B8B, that the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. Next slides are site photos of the property. This is on the west side of the property looking east. This is on the northwest side looking east also. This is on the north side looking south. This is on the south or the northeast side looking southwest. This is on the southwest side looking east along the back side of the property. This is where the pipeline is located. And this is a zoning map of the surrounding zoning. The existing zoning is light manufacturing. Light manufacturing is also located to the west and to the south. To the east and to the south. To the west is C17L, and to the north is R12. There's been quite a few special use permits in the surrounding area. To the north, in 2005, there was a special use permit that was approved for an elementary school. And in 1992, there was a special use permit approved for fire station number 2. And just to the east, there was a special use in 93 also for an administrative office. Surrounding land uses to the north and west are civic uses, to the east is commercial, and to the south is vacant. The last finding is finding B8C, that the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. This application has been routed through the city departments, and each department has indicated that there are adequate public facilities and public utilities available to serve the proposed request. The full list of the staff comments are on page 9 and 11. And finally, there was 2 recommendations with the special use permit through the water department. The first one is any additional main extensions and/or fire hydrants and services will be be the responsibility of the applicant at their expense. And number 2, any additional water service will have cap fees due at the time of building permit. You will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. The applicant's also here.
Okay, no questions, Mike, thanks.
Okay.
Appreciate it. First person is Matt DeMarco. Just state your name and I'll swear you in.
I'm Matt DeMarco.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to thank the Planning Commission and all the planning department and the legal team for helping us with our project. It's a lot for us to undertake. We're in an unfamiliar territory, but I'm here to answer any questions you have about our project, specifically if you have any.
I don't know, if you don't, any questions, go ahead, John.
Just kind of curious, is this a new function, or is this something you're relocating from somewhere else in town?
This would be a new business that we would open at that site.
So this is emergency, right? They're
Correct.
Emergency pet care, you're not doing holdings or care of the dog long-term. You don't have
Correct.
run yards, you don't have, it's really just take care of that dog that got hit by a car or has some horrible thing going on.
Correct. We would
So-
complement the
so you-
existing veterinary services in the area by providing an avenue for pets and their owners to have 24-hour care available
Okay.
to their patients in this area.
So you're not holding a lot of cats or dogs for a long period of time.
Yep.
You're not disposing of euthanized dogs or cats, are you?
There's services that would
They come and take
render
care
those
of
services
that.
if needed.
Because we just approved a vet practice across up the road from you.
Yes.
So they would be hopefully one of your
Yes, exactly. Again, we
feeders.
would complement their
Feeders,
services
okay.
and hopefully attract new services to the area that aren't available
Okay.
at this time, so.
Okay.
And if I read correctly, your hours are after hours, more so after 5 o'clock or so, if you can clarify that for us.
Basically, our hours of operation are nights, holidays, and weekends. So when traditional veterinary clinics close, we open to provide service for clients.
Right,
And
and
as well
also-
as give them a break from on-call duties that are required of.
Okay, great. And also, I read that we no outside animals at any time.
Correct. Well, they'd be on a leash with
Yes, I mean,
with an owner or
whatever they have to do, yeah.
employee, correct.
Okay.
And just a
Great.
quick question for clarity purposes. I don't see that this facility could certainly accommodate large animals like equine type animals. There are other veterinary clinics that can
Right,
certainly
my
handle that.
understanding of the current zoning is it permits large animal use as well as commercial kennels. We are, I guess, less of an impact to the surrounding area than those currently available under the zoning right now. So, yeah, we're pretty quiet.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Drew Choker, in favor, and does wish to speak?
I am Drew Choker.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
It is.
We should have a recording of that,
I
really.
know you should, make it speedy. Any questions that I can answer for you, I'm happy to do. Again, we're opening a small animal clinic, and it is already zoned for large animal, and I would rather bring a little dog in than a cow, so, yeah.
Go to the cow.
Any additional questions? No? Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
you.
Joe. Appreciate
Thank
it. Tawny Bailey is in favor but does not wish to speak. And those are the only people I have on the sign-up. Do you wish to speak? Did you sign up?
I did not sign up. I
Okay,
did
come
sign
on up and I'll state your name and you can sign the page later.
We'll follow you.
State your name.
My name's Ben Mello.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
So I coach soccer, and we use that parking lot at night times. Actually, one of the members up here was on my, their child was on my soccer team. And I'm not against this at all, but we use that parking lot when there are soccer games there, and it sounds like they'll be using that during that time. My recommendation to the board and to city staff is to develop a pedestrian bridge from Ramsey over so that people can park and not have to cross the war zone that Ramsey is. So I'm not really against this. I didn't know this was going on. I came to talk about something else, but if you take away those 15 spots that people park in, and maybe it looks like 8, but there's all the way it wraps around, it's going to be a pretty bad thing for people as they have to more and more have to park around Ramsey at the Ramsey School there and walk across. So my recommendation is you put a pedestrian bridge over there.
Okay. And go ahead, Hillary.
Oh, we are looking at some future solutions for pedestrian safety up there. Probably not that one just because the cost of it, but I know we are looking at some options and ways to handle that.
Thank you. I guess it's named after a woman who got hit, right? It'd be nice to figure something out.
Okay. Before we make a comment, I forgot to ask, and I should have done this in the last hearing, but does any of the commissioners have a conflict on this hearing that we're having right now? No, okay. We're legal now, so go ahead. You had a question.
Is the easement between the applicant and the city, is that for all hours? And I understand this would mostly be evenings and night anyway, but does an easement, is it independent
There was an
of time?
existing easement when the bank was there.
Okay,
This
so it's not
easement
new.
was modified slightly. There's still going to be parking in the vet clinic parking lot for users of the field. So there's not much that has changed.
Okay.
Matt, you have a few minutes if you want to come up to address anything that was just heard. Nope? Okay. This time we're going to close public hearing and
I have a comment, Mr. Chair.
discussion. Go ahead.
So in support of the testimony of Mr. Mello, I think I recall it's Coeur d'Alene Rec Soccer, correct? Yeah, so I remember actually parking in the Ramsey School parking lot and walking across as there was significant demand for parking. I think that's an interesting point. And again, I would also encourage staff to examine the idea of having some kind of pedestrian crossing capability. As long as Coeur d'Alene Rec Soccer is going to be on those fields, which it appears to be since my son was in rec soccer 3 years ago, so it's seemingly supported by the community, I think it's a very strong idea.
I totally agree that my boys went there as well. I was lucky enough to park close to the soccer field, though. But perhaps, staff looks at the new flashing light pedestrians that you have down on Sherman, which I would have to say I use Sherman quite a bit, is working quite well. People actually stop for pedestrians now. So if you can probably look at that, that might be a great add to Ramsey, and it'll slow traffic down.
I'll make sure to convey all the comments to Chris Bosley.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any further discussion? I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Lee. Thanks.
This matter having come before the Planning Commission on July 10th, 2018, and there being present a person requesting approval of item SP 7-18A, a veterinarian office, special use permit in the LM zoning district. Applicant is Matt DeMarco and Dwayne Choker. Location is plus or minus 0.7 acre parcel located at 1336 West Kathleen Avenue. Our findings as boilerplate, justification for the decision, criteria, standards, and facts relied upon. Items B through B7, which are you're here, we listened to you, and all that. B8, pursuant to section 17.09.220, special use permit criteria, a special use permit may be approved only if the proposal conforms to all of the following criteria to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. Proposal is in conformance with the comp plan, and it particularly covers the business image and diversity. It provides a service to the city in a key neighborhood that is only getting more dense and more demand for this kind of service. And certainly a community design. The building already exists. It's been standing empty for quite a while. It'll be great to see life back into a very good-looking building. And we will, on our side, look into how we handle parking and access, safe access to the parks behind it. And that does not fall into this category for the applicant. B8B, the design and planning of the site is compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. This is based on density, certainly the fit to the location, the existing land use pattern. We have great many houses in this area, and certainly the traffic and access is excellent. And the appearance of the project is, as we can see, a well-built, solid, good-looking building, so we want to preserve it. B8C, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. And this is based on, it's already been served and will continue to be served. If we need to make upgrades to fire hydrants and so on, that will have to be addressed at review. So in order in the conclusion decision, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that a special use permit for Matt DeMarco and Dwayne Choker, as described in the application, should be approved with the following special conditions applied as noted for water. 1, any additional main extensions and/or fire hydrants and services will be the responsibility of the applicant at their expense. And 2, any additional water service will have cap fees due at time of building permit.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion by Fleming. I need a second.
I'll second it.
I have a second by Ward. Roll call, Shannon?
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
Lutrip.
Yes.
Rumpler.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Okay, SP-7-18, proposed veterinarian clinic special use permit in an LM zoning district is passed. Best of luck to you. Thank you.
We got another sheet. We got another sheet.
The next item is a proposed 1.2 acre annexation from agricultural to R17 zoning district. It's item number A-1-18. Tammy, go ahead.
This is a request for an annexation from county agricultural suburban to city R17. The applicant this evening is Aspen Homes Development, LLC, and it's a 1.22 acre parcel near the intersection of 15th Street and Best Avenue. Again, they're requesting the R17 zoning designation for this piece of property. Currently, a single-family residence and accessory storage structure are the only uses on the property, and there are a mix of zoning districts both in the city and the county that do exist in that area. This is a vicinity map showing the subject property outlined here in the yellow, and it is south of Best, and this is 15th Street. And this red outline is the city limit line. This is an annexation map, again outlined in the yellow. It's a subject property. So the R17 zoning district is generally described and intended as a medium-high density residential district that permits a mix of housing types at a density not greater than 17 units per gross acre. Permits single-family detached housing and duplex housing. District is established in those areas that are not suitable for lower density residential use due to proximity to more intense types of land use. And the district is appropriate as a transition between low-density residential and commercial districts, or as a buffer between arterial streets and low-density residential districts. So finding B8, that this proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan policies. And this is designated as the Northeast Prairie designation, and it's stable established. And this is where it's located on the comprehensive, in the comprehensive plan on the map. And this is a description about the Northeast Prairie today. And it talks about the areas composed of a variety of zoning districts with the majority of residential density at 3 to 8 acres per unit. Lower density development becomes more prominent moving north. The Northeast Prairie provides a range of housing choices that include a number of large recreation areas and small pocket parks. And this is a description of the Northeast Prairie tomorrow. Characteristics of the Northeast Prairie neighborhoods are included in your staff report. And I've included the comprehensive plan goals and objectives also. That public facilities and utilities are or not available and adequate for the proposed use. As far as stormwater, it will be addressed as the area proposed for annexation develops. Streets, the subject site has frontage along east side of 15th Street, and any necessary improvements to the site will be addressed during the time of subdivision and/or development of the property. As far as water, the property for the proposed annexation lies within the City of Coeur d'Alene water service area. There is sufficient capacity within the public service system to provide adequate domestic irrigation and fire flow service to the subject property. Any proposed development of the parcel will require an extension of the public water utilities at the owner's expense. And wastewater, the nearest public sanitary sewer is located within Ramsey Road, which borders the eastern boundary of this annexation. In accordance with the 2013 Sewer Master Plan, the city's wastewater utility has the wastewater system capacity and willingness to serve this annexation as proposed. And the fire department works with engineering, water, and building departments to ensure the design of any proposal meets mandated safety requirements for the city and its residents. And those requirements would also be dealt with at the time of development or building permit requests. Finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site make or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. And there are no physical constraints. The property is flat. This is the subject property looking southeast along 15th Street. And again, looking southeast toward the subject property along 15th Street, further away. That the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and existing land uses. As far as neighborhood character, the subject property is located near the southeast intersection of Best Avenue and 15th Street. Uses in this area include a convenience store, gas station, which is commercial, single families, duplex homes, residential, Sunset Field, as well as some vacant property in the vicinity. Finding B11. As far as traffic, the proposed annexation would likely not adversely affect the surrounding area with regard to traffic. 15th Street does have the available capability to accommodate additional traffic generated from the subject site. Additionally, the site is located far enough from Best Avenue intersection to not affect its function, and that's reported by Chris Bosley, the city engineer. This is the generalized existing land use map, and this outlines the subject property. There's multifamily in this area. This is vacant, commercial use here, and some single-family dwelling units along this side of 15th. As far as the zoning, this is the subject property again. This is neighborhood commercial. It's also vacant, so nothing's been developed on this property. And then on this side of 15th, it's all single families, R12, and then the red designates the commercial areas. This evening, the Planning Commission must consider this request and make the appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And the applicant and his representative are here.
Okay. Any questions?
I have a question.
Tammy?
Sure. This is a 140-foot north-south dimension. Would we only allow one entry point for entry and exit? In 140 feet, can we have two?
I don't have that answer, honestly, as far as.
Because I worry about traffic, you know, two people heading through two and going, huh, yeah, hello.
Yeah, that would probably something our city engineer would look at the time of development.
Okay, because I'd be worried they're close, but they're not that far apart. Okay, all right.
Okay, thanks, Tammy.
Thank you.
Rob Tate is in favor, are you representing the applicant, I take it?
Yes.
Randy, do I do swearing again? State name.
Robert Tate.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. Again, we're proposing to annex 1.22 acres into the city. It basically becomes an infill annexation. As you can see, your county property is very diverse throughout that area, and this would infill in that area. We feel that it supports the comp plan. The Northeast Prairie designation identifies a very mixed and diverse use of different uses within the area, and this follows within those guidelines. In the words of what John Ingalls said earlier today, I'm going to use this, it creates an eclectic mix. So we're going to use that tonight. Proposing R17 zoning for the 1.2 annexation area. All of the utilities front on 15th Street, and that's noted in your staff report. I think when they made the presentation, they mentioned Ramsey Road, which is quite a ways to go for here. We are providing a high-quality, affordable housing to the area. It's conveniently located to a lot of different uses. The convenience store to the north. There is the existing park area in Sunset Field that is probably underutilized, except when ball games going on, and this would help that. And I'm mainly here to answer any questions. You know, we're trying to provide, like I said, infill into the city and add a little more diversity.
Well, I think the question about the number of ingress, egress points
We are
ought to
proposing one ingress and egress to the site. We have to have a turnaround for a fire truck. We recognize that. Typically, the distance between driveways on this type of is 125 feet, and 146 feet would not necessarily allow for two entrances, just for your information. But that's something we would work with engineering and traffic on.
But we're only here to hear the annexation.
Yeah, we just want to hear the annexation.
I know.
I was just curious of this. Yeah.
John.
But everybody wants to hear what's going on.
Yeah. exactly.
Mr. Tate, Sean Holm calls parcels like this donut holes.
Yes.
I've called them Swiss cheese, which is, you know, when you look at the city's map, they're little kind of islands, if you will. Really, that parcel is receiving city services, EMS, police, fire. It fronts a public street that gets, the city plows and sweeps that street. It feels like it's in the city. It wants to be in the city. I totally would be very supportive of annexation. The question in my mind, though, is kind of, should it be R12 or R34? You know, help me with the argument of, you know, why one or the other?
Well, R34 would allow, in a sense, in my opinion, way more units than the site can really support. Then you would be looking at potential turning movements in and out of 15th and the site, because you'd be generating that many trips. R12 is on the other end of the economic spectrum in terms of the cost of development these days. R17 provides a middle ground where the economics versus the amount of infrastructure tend to balance. And that's probably the best answer I can give.
But 20 units is what you landed on.
Yes.
That would be less than the theoretical number of units that, in theory, you could put there.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Rob? That's it. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
Next person I've had, Ken Hollenbach is in favor but does not wish to speak. And then I have a Brenda Listman, didn't fill out anything, so I'm not quite sure what that person wants to do. Melissa Listman, again, didn't fill out anything, so I don't quite know what that person would like to do. And Daniel Braggle, again, didn't fill out anything, so I'm not quite sure what that person wants to do. Yes, ma'am? State your name, please.
Melissa Listman.
Oh, okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, so I've never been to one of these. I wasn't sure how to
Oh,
fill that out.
take it
but,
easy, we're okay here.
I just would like to say not in favor.
Not in favor?
Yes.
Any particular reason why you're saying you're not in favor?
Because I live at the adjoining property line, and we enjoy the fact that we're kind of on the outside of town, and there's lots of deer that come through there, wildlife in the backyard, and I just really don't want to see a big apartment complex with, parking lot lights and everything shining into our house, and it's just not something we wanted to live next to.
I understand that. And just to give you a little insight, this is just to bring it into the city, and the applicant still would have to work with staff, and there's a number of things they will address. One is lighting.
Yeah.
And things of that nature based on what they're going to be proposing. And Rob has a few minutes to come back and perhaps address any of those concerns that you just mentioned.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. You did great.
Thanks.
Rob, you want to address any issues?
I heard two specific issues. One is the deer, and I'm very much aware of the deer issue in Coeur d'Alene because I live on the boundary between the city and the county. And deer are an issue. I don't think this development, because of the field there, is going to affect the deer. It may slow them down moving across 15th a little bit, but not much. And any landscaping we provide is basically going to be deer food. But, yeah, very sensitive to the parking issue and lighting. And I'm sure that we can work within our own design to provide lighting that, is directly for our project and doesn't broadcast past the property lines. It can become very offensive at times, and I understand those issues. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions of Rob or anything? No? Thanks, Rob. I have no one else, so I'm going to close public testimony. At this time, I'd ask for some discussion and then a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you.
Better put my glasses on so I can read it. So this matter having come before the Planning Commission on July 10, 2018, and there being present a person requesting approval of item A-1-18, a request for zoning prior to annexation from county ag suburban to city R17. The applicant being Aspen Homes and Development LLC, and the location is a plus or minus 1.22 acre parcel near the intersection of 15th Street and Best Avenue. At this time, I'd like to propose that we adopt items B1 through B7 as standard and facts. Item B8, findings B8, I'm sorry, that this proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan policies as follows, mentioning the several objectives that are in front of us. Objective 1.12, the community design, 1.14, efficiency. Objective 3.01, managed growth. I think bringing in an area that certainly, as Commissioner Ingalls had mentioned, is touched by the city, looks and feels like it wants to be part of the city. I think that that's a responsible answer to what is in front of us. And the biggest thing, of course, is with city services, knowing that at the time of design and review and everything else that goes in for permitting, at that point in time, all those city services will have to give it the blessing. But again, all the items are there along 15th Street, so it certainly isn't a difficult proposal. The finding B9, that the public facilities and utilities are available and adequate for the proposed use, as I had mentioned. Findings B10, that the physical characteristics of the site makes it suitable for the request at this time. Finding B11, that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and/or existing land use. And I do appreciate the comment that we heard from the engineer regarding the one ingress egress point to the property down the road, so to speak. So therefore, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, concludes and decides that we find that the request for Aspen Homes and Development LLC for zoning prior to annexation, as described in this application, should be approved.
I'll second that
And that is my motion.
Okay, I
I'll
have a
second.
second. Before I ask for a roll call, do want to mention that I agree with B11 that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhoods regarding to basically neighborhood character and existing land uses, but to note that be aware that for lighting and the way the building might be situated later, that would go through the planning department, and we mentioned that to the applicant.
Right.
Okay. I have a first by Ward, a second by Fleming. Roll call. Shannon?
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
Lutrip.
Yes.
Rumpler.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Item A-1-18 is passed. It's a request for a annexation. Thank you. The next item is item number SP-8-18, an R34 density increase special use permit in the R17 zoning district. Sean, go right ahead.
All right, thank you, Chair. So tonight, another public hearing before Planning Commission, SP 818. As was mentioned, it's a request for a special use permit to allow a density increase from R17 to R34 for a proposed mixed-use multifamily structure. There was a little bit of misinformation in the beginning. When we sent out the notice, it was for a larger parcel, which included the property to the north that is an existing parking lot. That is not part of the request, although it does support the request. So as I move through my presentation, I'll point that out, and it's also in your staff report. I'm sure you've seen it. Okay, so the owner is Miller Stauffer Properties LLC. Applicant is Annalise Miller. The property is a little hair over half an acre at 623 East Wallace. It can be found at the corner of Wallace Avenue and North 7th Street. All right, so it's important to note that an R34 special use permit would allow an increased density to double that of R17, as well as increase the height from 45 feet up to 63 feet. A little background information. The existing site has a single 8,000 square foot structure on it right now. It was built in the 1960s. It also includes a basement. Current use is professional office space, and that was built originally as a GTE building. It is non-conforming. It is commercial use in an R17, but that was approved number of years ago. It is grandfathered in, as well as the special use permit to the north that allows for commercial parking. So the applicant's goal is to repurpose the existing office structure into a 30-foot tall, 2-story mixed-use facility with apartments over the first floor. The ground floor would be a mix of residential use and walkout porches. The basement would remain commercial space as far as that I'm aware. The applicant can expand on that. All right, so location map. This is the location of the request here. It is the old Social Security building, and it's located right here on the corner. 7th Street runs north-south, Wallace Avenue east-west. Here's a little closer view of the property. It's important to note at the southern end across the street from Wallace is an existing church. That property is roughly 40 foot tall. I think the spire is a little bit taller. There is a yoga studio here. This is an old schoolhouse. It is approximately 40 foot tall as well. It's flanked on this side by 2 new single-family homes that were recently built within the last couple of years, and then largely single-family around that. Here's the site plan. As mentioned earlier, back in 1986, there was a zone change in conjunction with a special use permit that allowed for commercial parking with conditions. Those conditions are listed at the end of the staff report as well in continued conditions. And then this is the subject property here that is requesting the R34 special use permit. So there are 3 findings that need to be made for a special use permit. Make sure that I'm covering this properly. Okay, I guess before I get too far down the road here, just want to let everybody know that an R17 allows 17 units per gross acre. Roughly what that works out to be is 2,500 square feet per unit is what is required. And the maximum height in an R17 by right, this is something that the applicant could do now if they wanted to, would be a maximum height of 45 feet. Also, the parking requirements for multifamily were included in your staff report as well. They are based on number of bedrooms provided. All right, so finding B8A is that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. Much like the previous request, this is located in the historical heart in a stable established area. The location is right here. Once again, historical heart today. Same comments as previous. The traditional tree-lined, small block grid-style street system with alleys is the norm in the area. Historical heart tomorrow. Stakeholders must work together to find a balance between commercial, residential, and mixed-use development in the historic heart that allows for increased density and harmony with long-established neighborhoods and uses. And I'd also like to take this moment to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is what the process is designed to do, is to let everybody have a say in their local neighborhood. So the characteristics of a historical heart neighborhood will be, and these are the listings here. This particular property does not fall in an infill area, an infill regulation area like the DON or DOE. I'd also like to point out very similarly that the city encourages growth that complements and strengthens existing neighborhoods, public open spaces, parks, and schools while providing pedestrian connectivity. Here are some comprehensive plan objectives. There are some more in your packet. These ones I did spell out. They were the ones that applied the most to this request. Finding B8B is that the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. So this is a generalized land use map. As you can see, there is a number of single-family homes in the area, attached and detached, and quite a few civic uses. When this was the Social Security Administration office, it was a civic use. Since then, they are no longer a tenant, and now it is a commercial use. The property to the north, as mentioned through the special use permit in '86, was approved for commercial parking, and the yoga studio and some office space located here is commercial use. Here are some site photos. The applicant will have some of these as well, I'm sure. This is a view of Wallace Avenue streetscape from 7th Street looking west. As mentioned, the church is across the street to the south. This is the building that is the subject tonight. This is a view a little bit farther west down Wallace, looking towards 7th Street and showing where the egress is existing into the current parking lot that is on site with the structure. This is the alleyway looking directly west, parking lot on one side, building in question on the other, and then this is a view of the supporting parking lot. All right, so I've learned from Peter throughout the years that it's important to bring up information that's relevant to what has been approved in the past. So here is the map of our special use permits in the area. You can see there's been a number of special use permits around the area. The closest one, as mentioned in your staff report, is this R34 right here, which was approved in 1998. However, as far as staff could tell, that was never constructed on because that is currently where the fire administration building is. There is an R70, which really doesn't exist anymore in our code. That was when the downtown core was known as C34 and allowed for special use permits at an R70 density level. There are some other community education and religious assembly around the area. Right, finding B8C is that the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. Staff did weigh in, different departments, as to what the impacts would be. They are listed in your staff report. Nothing stood out as anything that would prevent the improvement of the site to an R34 standard from city staff standpoint. There is a mention of traffic. I can find it here, give me a second. This was submitted by Chris Bosley, the city engineer, that the proposed change of use is not expected to have adverse effects on the adjacent transportation network. The ITE trip generation manual estimates fewer peak hour vehicle trips will result from the proposed residential use compared to the former governmental use, civic use in this case. The engineering department has no objection to the special use permit as proposed. Water and wastewater also indicate that they can service the property as well. All right, so here's some notes from planning staff to kind of put things into perspective. Currently, the property is zoned R17 and a little hair over half an acre. That would allow for a total of 8.8 units. We do round up after 0.5 when you get to a triplex and above, with a maximum height of 45 feet from average finished grade to the peak. Approval of this R34 special use permit without conditions has a potential for 17.25 units, which staff would round down to 17, with a maximum height of 63 feet from average finished grade to peak. Here are some building elevations that were provided by the applicant showing what they intend to build. This is 7th Street right here. This is Wallace, the church, and the yoga studio here for perspective. Wallace Avenue, 7th Street, yoga studio behind that church off of the screen. Okay, so there are 6 recommended conditions. However, I did want to go back and mention a couple of quick things here. Sorry for jumping all over the place. So to warrant consideration, the property for an R34 must, in addition to having R17 or C17, C17L, or light manufacturing designation, need to meet the following requirements. It needs to be in close proximity to an arterial. This information can be found on page 7 of your staff report, by the way. As defined by the Coeur d'Alene Transportation Plan, sufficient to handle the amount of traffic generated by the request in addition to that surrounding the neighborhood, and project, or in such a way as, and project and accessing street must be designed in such a way as to minimize vehicular traffic through the adjacent residential neighborhoods. So the arterials in the area include Northwest Boulevard, Sherman Avenue, Harrison Avenue, and 15th Street. I did ask Chris Bosley to check into 7th Street, and 7th Street is a collector according to what Chris Bosley provided. Number 2, be in close proximity to shopping, schools, and park areas. It's not an adult-only apartment complex, so the rest does not apply. On page 7, it shows proximity to Midtown, Downtown, City Park, Epiphany Park, Persons Field, Lakes Middle School, and Sorensen Elementary. Okay, so there are 6 recommended conditions that staff has produced. Water is very similar to what we've heard with other items tonight, is any extensions of hydrants or services will be the responsibility of the developer, and additional water services will be due at the time of building permit. Planning, our first request is that the previously approved special use permit from 1986 would extend, and that they would still need to buffer the property directly west, 50%, let's see, with a fence, as well as between the parking lot and the property lines, and this is along 7th Street where the trees currently exist, that those remain 50% deciduous and 50% evergreen. And prohibition of access directly from 7th Street. Currently, they use the alley to access that property, and that would remain that way. There would not be an additional ingress or egress from 7th Street to the existing parking lot. And then 2 trees should remain and shall be pruned to urban forestry standards. Just want to make sure that the trees remain. Okay, so number 4, recommended condition by the planning department is to set a maximum height for any structure proposed for the site at an R17 zoning standard of 45 feet. So that exists today. Based on an R17 standard, without an R34 special use permit, they could build to 45 feet. That's where staff would like to see the maximum height capped at. All right, so existing floor area dedicated to commercial office space, the legal non-conforming use may not increase. They are actually planning to decrease that and turn some of that office space that's on the ground floor into residential with walkout patios. The existing street trees must remain, although they may be pruned to urban forestry standards at the developer's expense. So with that, that will wrap up the staff report presentation. And the Planning Commission must consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, and deny without prejudice. Before I close, I would also like to mention that proper legal notice was provided. We did hear a couple of comments that I didn't receive notice. Notice is sent out, and this is for everybody in the room as well as at home, is that they are sent out to within 300 feet of the property. So if someone did not receive legal notice, most likely they are farther than 300 feet away. That concludes my staff report. I'll stand for questions.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Sean. This one's a little tricky. We've got a lot of folks in the audience, and I'm trying to help frame really what's on the table, I guess. Help me understand myself. With the grandfathering with respect to the building, it was GTE a long time ago. Then they moved away. Social Security moved in there not that long ago, maybe 8 years ago, and then they left 3 years ago or something like that. They weren't there that long. There was no special use permit required for Social Security to move in there, right?
Correct. There is a special use permit on the property, but it did not apply directly to that. That's for
where I'm going is tomorrow, someone could move an office in there without even pulling a permit, conceivably, right?
Correct.
So the use of that building in the future, as it stands for office, isn't really at issue.
Correct.
So a developer could continue to, say, lease that out and add 9 units above without having a hearing at all. They'd have to pull a permit, obviously. So really, this isn't about whether or not we can have an office space in there, or office place plus some amount of residential for a mixed-use project, this is really what comes down to, you know, could it be a project of 9 or 17 units of residential? So really this special use permit is really, what's in play here is 8 units. Am I following you?
That is very accurate. That is very
kind of summarize. I think sometimes, you know, we maybe get to thinking, you know, this is all or nothing, you know. I don't want to see anything there. You know, I don't want to see any residential. I don't want to see any sort of commercial-like activity. I think it's important for everybody to understand this is kind of a shade of gray, not black or white.
Yes. So generally, when staff reviews these type of things, it comes down to, can they meet their setbacks, their height, and parking requirements? In this case, they have almost all of that in spades. There's plenty of parking that exists there now, especially with the support to the north. Staff is requesting a maximum height that they already would have in R17, you know, and foregoing the extra height up to 63 feet. So it really comes down to, do the units get bigger and have more bedrooms than an R17 standard, or do you allow for higher density?
Thank you.
My shades are darker than yours, I guess. As it currently exists, the owner can put in 9 units. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this will permit them to put in 17.
Correct.
And currently, the height is 45 feet.
For multifamily, yes.
And what is it for churches?
Church, it's actually in here, different use for anything other, sorry, a lot of pages.
We'll look also for schools.
Basically just lists anything other than residential. Like a single-family house would allow 32. All right, so single-family and duplex structure is 32 feet, multifamily is 45 for public recreation, community education, which is school, and religious assembly activities is 45 feet as well.
So we have 2 buildings there that are 40 feet, but they could be 45.
Yes. And, approximately, and I didn't go out and do a physical measurement, but yes, they are fairly tall buildings.
Seems, I'm not, the special use for a commercial building, that's not what I'm focused on. What I'm focused on is the change that we're proposing is essentially from 45 to 63 feet, although you have a condition, and from 9 units to 17.
That is what's on the table.
Thank you.
But also, the staff is recommending that the height only be 45 feet.
That's right, and that will come back through us, but I want to know how.
Well, that
I'm
would
sure
be what we would approve tonight, if we decide this got approved, because that would, we can make that a condition, can we?
Absolutely.
And that's, I understand that, but I assume the proposer's coming through and is going to ask for 63. Because if they weren't, it wouldn't be printed like this. So I'm looking at what is being proposed, what is currently exists, what is being proposed, and then we go between.
Go back and forth.
Thank you.
Anybody else for Sean?
I just have a comment.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Chair.
Comment.
First, I'd like to thank Commissioner Ingalls and Commissioner Luther for helping us level set the conversation. It's always very useful to try and reduce the issues to understandable, and I think that's quite important. I've had 2 children who've gone to Sorensen Elementary, so I'm very familiar with this area. I come up and down 7th all the time, and I've always been curious about that building. I mean, it's just, it's a building that, for all intents and purposes, as I drive by it, is vacant. It doesn't appear to be used. So it's interesting conversation, and I look forward to the testimony. It doesn't seem to be a very high and best use as it currently stands. So what it ultimately becomes is an interesting question, but as it stands, my impression is it is certainly not the high and best use as it stands today.
And as Sean say, we do appreciate one here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what testimony it might be. I have a lot of people that have signed up, but very few that want to say anything. And if you choose to change your mind and voice your opinion, please do so. We're friendly. It's not hard to come up here and talk to us. So your input is important. So as I call your name, if you choose to change your desire to come up and speak, please do so. And I take it this is the applicant. Please state your name.
Dick Stauffer.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Commissioner and Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, Commissioner Engels almost stole my presentation here. And it really is, I think is, before I get going, anytime you ask for something, there's this knee-jerk reaction that this is more intense, it's bad for us, it's all downhill from here. And I think as we approach this thing, and make no doubt about it, we're owner, architect, developer. We're trying to make this thing economically viable. That's certainly our motive in the process. But as we went through this, we thought that we could soften the whole thing, achieve our goals, and really be almost kind of a non-issue to the neighborhood. And I don't think it's coming off like that. And so hopefully through this presentation, and I think another point of introduction and clarity is that the phone building, built in 1963, there is still 2,000 feet of operating T1s, fiber optics, copper, switch gear that keeps downtown Coeur d'Alene functional. That is not going away. That's there until technology means that it won't be. So that's in the basement of the building, that's down there. So there's currently a tenant, an office medical records tenant in the basement. Since Social Security moved out last summer, we've been vacant, we've been looking for a tenant. But as we go through this, I'm going to start and I'll revisit some of the things that Sean already covered, but with a little bit different context. You've seen this slide 100 times. This gives us where we're at. That's where we're at in terms of the downtown. This is a little planning 101. I like to do this. This is just us being architects looking at things. You've got your core area there. You've got, this is Central Business District, urban core is what we call it in our planning area. And traditionally you have this transition zone that happens between your urban core and your low density residential. You draw a circle around that, you see that you take in the county campus, you take in City Hall where we're at here, you take in City Park and some of that, and usually that's where your higher density housing happens, and then everything beyond that becomes lower density. You see Sanders Beach, Fort Grounds, Garden District, of which we're part of. That is classic planning. This is that same ring in an emphasized area. We're in the what you would consider the ring there. And all the little, the blue spots with the red circles around them, you would say there's no multifamily in the Garden District. Well, there's a lot of multifamily in the Garden District. Most of them are small. Duplexes, triplexes, converted homes. You see the 111, that's the old brick building that is up at Garden and Fifth. Looking at us, the streetwise, and then the two big buildings, the bookend, the office building is our site in the middle. You see the CDA Wedding Chapel and the mixed-use building, which is the old schoolhouse on the north. So really it's bookended by these 240-plus tall old buildings, Methodist Church, 1908. I think the school building's about the same era. The Verizon building, or the GTE buildings, 1963. In the middle. So those are the two great big buildings, and those are the most direct neighbors to this site. See the building in the background behind the church there. And there it is. And there's 7th Street, which is the primary access into this site. And then the existing parking areas, which are accessed off of 7th Street. One of the nice things about this, there's an abundance of parking in the area, and there are 3 different ways to get to it, all off of 7th Street. This just gives you another view. Google is wonderful. That gives you context in regards to downtown. And you can see the size of the schoolhouse on the one corner of the block, the GTE building with the arrow to it and the church in the background. And then the heavily treed areas. Same slides that Sean shared with you. This is a plus or minus 16-foot tall, very commercial building, almost a little bit ahead of its time in that this was built with the parking behind and to the side. And I think your planning department would say, yeah, can we get more people to do that so we can retain our streetscape and put the buildings on the front and have walk-up? That's all great, but this is where it is. We're having trouble attracting commercial tenants right now. And so with a really substantial building, an abundance of parking, and with the new urbanization, what is needed? Well, I think almost uniformly, more downtown housing. In some way, shape, or form, I think, you can say where you want it and how dense you want it or where you want it, but I think everybody knows that it's very popular, and it's something that is currently being built, and there's more need for it. This is the 9,000 square foot. You've seen a couple different numbers here. The 9,000 square foot is the amount of kind of leasable square footage in the building. Plus, on top of that, there's the Verizon or the Frontier portion that's also in the basement. There's also 55 parking spaces, depending on how you stripe it. Those are existing. That's asphalt that's on the ground. Those are legal parking spaces, according to the city, with good access and landscaped correctly with stormwater management. It is parking, and all of that is there. This is nothing that we're proposing at this point. There's a number of mature street trees. We've nurtured those. We've been a good steward of that property. We have ADA accessibility around the building and into the building. We have street trees. We have maintained landscape. We plow snow. We do all those things that not all neighborhoods do, but we think that's important. This is a bird's eye of what we could see happening there. And this would be, once again, in addition to the entitled 9 units and the commercial space which is there, of which we can still have plenty of parking to meet the current codes, we would like to get an additional 8 units, which would take back that commercial component. So what we're really doing, and I think John hit on this early, is that we're softening that commercial feel in this area, and that's not only in how it's used, but that's how it looks. All of a sudden you start appending decks and patios and little fences and additional doors onto this building, and you don't have a big, hard commercial building in the middle of this district on 7th Street. So we're seeing residential over residential with some commercial that's all still parked comfortably, not only parked to the code, but parked comfortably. Not adding any parking and retaining all those things, the laundry list of things that Sean said that the planning department recommended, including the 45-foot height. I think we have a certain amount of tools. I think, Peter, when we come in with these applications that say this is what we're applying for and it's got a 63-foot, but we don't want or need 63 feet. So we're receptive to that, but that is, with a C-34, that's what you apply for. So I understand that that's not popular, but we're in agreement with what planning has recommended here, that we have a condition attached to us. Existing parking retention, existing trees that are retained. Many of the buildings in this district are 2-story. We'd probably be a little bit tall to 2-story because we started with a tall 1-story. So we're a little bit taller than that, but we're still well within the 45 feet allowed. Once again, this is so much a concept as a design where we might have some fencing, patios, additional doors, covered parking, landscape parking. So in summary here, we would soften the historical use in a predominantly residential context. while staying compatible with the zoning and comprehensive plan goals. Provided needed housing opportunity near the downtown core, and I've already hit on that. Repurpose existing improvements and infrastructure without additional burden. I'm going to come back one more time to a couple of the notes that are in the council or the commission's packet. Traffic, the proposed change of use is not expected to have adverse effects on the adjacent transportation network. The trip generation manual estimates fewer peak hour trips will result from the proposed residential use. That's from your city engineer. And I think I love when I do these presentations. To me, this is part of the big picture in this tax basis. This property right now pays in excess of $12,000 of real estate taxes every year. If we would do the kind of proposal we're talking, it would double that. These are crude numbers, but just given the 1.5% that we're seeing based on the values of things, that's, we would, once again, it's always important in the discussion of these things. And really, as we see it, a reduction in traffic and really a reduction of some of the commercial use. Less traffic, but more residential, a diminished commercial presence, and really with the parking that's already there. So is there significant adjustments to the building? Yes, but we think it's in a softened in an architectural favorable manner. With that, I'd like to open it up to questions.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Lou.
Is the concept to remove the existing building or
No.
wrap the building?
No, once again, we are bound to Frontier to protect their position and where they're at. We are working over and around them. They have a freight elevator in the back of the building where they can access this stuff. They've got emergency generator equipment down there. They don't have any people there, but they have a presence there, and they have a presence in perpetuity right now. So we work around them. So all the main floor building area, as well as anything we would add, they're buried. You don't see them there, but they have a permanent presence there.
So you're literally piggybacking on top of the existing structure?
That's correct.
Okay.
Dick, how do you feel what the staff was saying, 45 compared to what you could do in that?
First of all, I understand why they suggested that, and I think what we are looking at is, once again, it's 8 units. We don't need multiple stories, and we don't need to reach out. Almost all these projects, multifamily, commercial, where you're infill, they're parking driven. And I know you guys see this all the time, but you almost work from the parking backwards. How can we comfortably park it and make it so the planning department is happy, and then what do we have left that we can do? Well, the 50-some spaces are about what we can do parking-wise. Well, you work that backwards. That will support at 1 to 300. That would support 15,000 feet of commercial space. Well, we already have 9,000 feet that we're kind of struggling with in that area. But we can build residential that we're pretty confident that we can market at this point in this particular area. And so that kind of drives your project. And so the special use permit allows us to build a few more units and really displace some of that commercial with residential units.
Because you're tied into the parking, you couldn't really get a lot more units higher.
That's correct.
To put 2 stories of units up there, you just couldn't do because of the parking restrictions.
That's correct.
Okay. Yes, John.
So, Mr. Stauffer, when we say soften, that's kind of a nice way of saying the existing building there really isn't so attractive.
Well, and once again, we try not to, architecture is very subjective, but I think it's very hard lined with big windows without moles. There aren't a lot of fingers that reach out that cause shadow lines.
That looks a lot more attractive than what I see when I drive down.
Yeah, I think, the eyebrow across the top, and once again, this is not an in-depth design. This is, quick sketching.
So on that same block, there's that, you mentioned the yoga studio?
The old schoolhouse.
And these old schoolhouses, sometimes they just linger, and they're not maintained. You know, Kellogg, and
Yeah.
they've got a couple of them that are just eyesores. They're horrible. And this could be, I don't know if there's another Social Security Administration to move in there, and is there really a need downtown for office space? I'd wonder whether it would sit and become one of these eyesores possibly. What's your sense of?
Well, as once again, from the financial end, as an owner developer, we feel we share some of that concern, and we feel we need to move forward with an idea that we're confident is marketable. And it's buildings are, I think, to take off on your comment, buildings are kind of living things, and they need to have people in them in order to stay maintained. And the water needs to run, the power needs to be run. You need to vacuum them regularly. And when they get empty, they deteriorate quickly. And so we want to see it used. We've got a financial burden in carrying it along. We'd like to see it make some money. We think this can be not a burden to the neighborhood, and we think there's a lot of infrastructure in place already that is, in the term, sustainability is kind of thrown around, but we like to see these things reused and repurposed and put back to work, because it is a good building. The bones of the building are very good.
And I'm sorry to finish that thought. Where I was kind of going with that, all of that, is worry that we end up with a building that sits and sits and sits. Is this project viable at 8 units rather than 17? If this isn't approved, does it have a chance of moving forward?
And this shouldn't be misconstrued, but the response, and once again, this is in the staff report, is that we can keep our commercial and we can build 9 units. So we could make something that looks exactly like this and not ask you guys for anything. I mean, that's entitled already. But what we're trying to do is take some of the other commercial and put it into residential, and for that, we have to ask you. It almost seems a little bit backwards, but that's a density thing, and that's the way, the planning code can't be all things to all people, and so you have these procedures in order to tweak things. But we're trying to use what we have, but we have to ask permission in order to add residential units to do that.
That's why it's called a special use permit.
That's why it's called a special use permit.
So are you going to tear the existing building down?
No.
You're going to convert it to apartments?
We will convert it and add on to it.
Whole thing.
Well, I know we were talking, but John was talking about eyesores and so forth, and I don't know.
No, it is, Peter, it's a concrete and steel masonry clad building. It's a substantial building. Concrete floors on the main deck. It's got a concrete lid on it. It's a substantial building. And so we would certainly peel a lot of things back.
Would be restructured.
That's correct.
Any other questions? I like the presentation, and I hope it maybe relieves some anxiety. We'll find out in a minute or two, but thank you. First person is a Wayne Segni, and is neutral, did not want to speak. Paula Anderson is opposed, did not want to speak. Wendy Wilson is opposed and does not want to speak. Daniel Brogel is opposed and does not want to speak. Anna Kathy Beechler is opposed and does want to speak. Name?
Kathy Beechler.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. I question.
And you have 5 minutes.
I question, is that the 8 units or the 17 units? Because it seems like that would be the 8 units. When's this?
That, the applicant would have to answer that.
Clarify,
or
that's
staff.
17 units.
That's 17 units? Well, I was wondering, earlier we had the deviation, and you talked about how you plotted them because it was historically fit in the neighborhood. This does not historically fit in the neighborhood at all. I think it looks ugly. And also it's apartments, so is that rentals, or it's going to be rentals?
That, again, the applicant could come back and address later. The applicant has some
Because that
time.
concerns me, because property values, depending on who you get in there, that could hurt our property values. Also, I'm concerned about the sewage and water. They said that it is okay, but I know that our sewage is archaic because I've had it backed up and the city had to compensate me for the things that happened when that happened. So I question that, and I question the congested area. I personally, commercial, it wasn't so bad as Social Security because at night it was quiet. But I think this is just going to change the whole feel of it, and I oppose it.
Okay.
you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Aaron McClothy, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, is opposed but does not wish to speak. Gene Kessler is opposed, did not indicate if he wanted to speak or not. Michael Bedman is opposed, again, did not indicate whether he wanted to speak or not.
I'll speak.
Oh, Michael, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Name?
Mike Beckman?
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, so I just have a couple of questions that I kind of want clarified. So I mark opposed. I'm not necessarily opposed as long as we get clarification to additional items. Some of those items being if it's going to be apartment, what's proposed rent, how many 2 bedrooms, how many 1 bedrooms. There's lots of entrances into those potential parking lots, one of them being off every single street. There's the alley entrance, there's an entrance on Wallace, there's an entrance on Garden, there's an entrance on 7th. I live 601 East Wallace, right on the corner. I'd like to propose that the alley be blocked off so we limit the number of potential entrances and we can start funneling traffic to, I think, the proper avenues. And then the other question I had is, it's mixed use commercial and residential. Is it mixed use because GTE is in the building and the basement's still gonna be GTE and the main floor and the second floor is gonna be apartments? Or is it going to be potential commercial on the first floor and then residential on the second floor?
Okay. The applicant has some time later to address any of those questions you just brought up.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, you're welcome, thank you. Adrian Weholt is opposed and does want to speak. Please, your name?
Adrian Weholt.
Do you swear that the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Mr. Stauffer, you actually seem like a pretty likable guy. Thank you for that. I came into this vehemently opposed to it. And I think that sentiment echoed everybody I talked to, 100% of the people I talked to. I have softened on a little bit. As it stands as apartments, I am opposed to that though, like Kathy is. I live half a block away. I'm worried about how that's going to affect my property values. I have a 3-year-old daughter. I worry what kind of people are going to be living there. Is she going to be in danger walking down the street? These are concerns of mine.
Okay.
For sure. And then also, as Kathy said, this is a historical district. Can you design something that maybe fits a little better in the district? Something not so modern, something that's not going to, in 10 years, be outdated? I guess that's what I have to say.
Okay, I'm sure he'll address some of those later. Thank you. I'm sorry.
I had no on the, but first time I didn't know whether it be yes or no.
Did you sign up on the sheet?
I did.
You did?
What's your name? What's your name?
Okay, we'll get to you if you're on the sheet.
Yeah, can I go now then?
No. I'll call your name. If you signed up, I'll call you. You'll get here.
Did you already call him? But you already called him.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, did I call you already?
Yeah, you already called him.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's your name?
Daniel Brogel.
Come on down.
This guy, right? Yeah.
Okay, just state your name.
Dan Brogel.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so
Yes,
help
sir.
you God?
Yeah.
You have 5 minutes. Go right ahead.
Okay, so I'm an architect as well.
Okay.
And I've heard a lot of testimony here about the fact that we have like 5 or 6 essential things about the nature of this community because of the community master plan that was adopted. And one thing that came up was really important to us because we're in a historical district. And that seems to be a very important point that's been brought up on several of these proposals. And I think when I look at this and when I hear the concerns, which I have as well, is that the 17 units are really outside the, what I would consider to be a historical neighborhood, the way the houses are configured. There was nothing shown about the adjacent houses, very historical, classy, and to build something like that, that will have an impact. I've lived here for 2 years now, and I've seen the increase in traffic. It's pretty incredible, the increase in traffic that's taking place in our area. And this exacerbates it, whether or not it's something that's allowed by the zoning of this property. I think it'd have a great impact. That's why I'm opposed to having 17 units rather than the R17 existing allowance for 8 units. So I just wanted to make that point. I think that you've hit on some concerns about the historical nature of the district and the community master plan. I think you should adhere to that in this case as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Robin Van Horten is opposed and does want to speak. I think you know the drill at this time.
I don't.
Oh, just relax and tell me your name.
Robin Van Houten.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? You have 5 minutes.
Okay, the first part, the traffic part does bother me because I feel like it's zoned for this amount of traffic that, frankly, every time I drive by the building, it's always empty. You said earlier, there's no one ever there. So it's zoned for the amount of traffic that is not being used. So of course, now that people are going to be there, there's going to be more traffic. And we've lived here for almost 15 years, and I've seen it get worse and worse. One thing as a parent, I mean, my husband and I have been praying that none of the teachers at Sorensen have babies or have older children or in the school already, because we're terrified that we live half a block from Sorensen and our kids aren't going to get in. And if this is mixed use, that's just going to make that even worse. I mean, we're very frustrated about that situation. This is going to make that worse. The thing that really just comes home to me is that this does not fit the character of the neighborhood. Everything is about the character of the neighborhood. I hear people talking about, and it just doesn't. I mean, the building that's there doesn't necessarily either, but they were talking about the church across the street and the Stepping Stones building. Yeah, they're tall buildings, but they fit. They're historical buildings. They're beautiful. People love them. It just doesn't. It doesn't complement the area. It doesn't. These are all single-family houses, or at least they visually look like it. Whether or not they have, a couple split up into apartments or not, they all look like single-family houses. And to me, that's the character of our neighborhood. My husband and I run all the time with our kids, and someone else mentioned they have a 3-year-old daughter. I worry about that too when there's, people tearing down buildings and putting up condos here and there, and then there's now there's an apartment coming in. I mean, my kids love to walk and ride bikes, and I want to feel like we're in a safe area that still looks like our downtown Coeur d'Alene that we love.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I have.
Okay, thank you. Susan Kirkpatrick is opposed and does want to speak. Not here? Nope.
Does not want to speak. Does not want to speak.
Oh, you do not wish, no? Okay.
Does not want to speak.
Kelly Wolf is neutral and does not want to speak. Next page. Shelley Bennett in favor and does want to speak.
Shelley Bennett.
You swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Okay, you have 5 minutes.
I own property adjacent to this, directly to the west at 605 East Wallace, which is one of the new houses that was built a couple of years ago with an auxiliary dwelling unit in the back. I commend you for having auxiliary dwelling units allowed in your town. You've seen the bigger cities in the country struggling to infill so people have an opportunity to live there. The main floor commercial doesn't make any sense to me in this location with the 8 units over the top. So it makes more sense to me to have it be a denser residential use than trying to have residential units up above and then try to find the commercial uses to fit with them down below. Usually you'll find, and I am in the real estate business in Moscow, Idaho, just so you know, since I sound like a real estate agent. It doesn't make any sense to have commercial on the main floor in that area because A, you're going to have trouble trying to find the right use. You're going to have to split it up into smaller spaces. You could find fabulous uses, but residential is a known commodity. People want to live in downtown Coeur d'Alene. My property as an Airbnb, it's full all the time. The auxiliary dwelling unit is for my personal use. So I just would rather see more residential than any more commercial in that area. I think the residential, the 8 units with commercial on the main floor, I mean, obviously it works, but I don't think it will work nearly as well as 17 units of residential with the existing commercial that's already there.
All right.
Thank you very much. I
Thank
appreciate your
you.
time.
Kevin Conovan is opposed and does not want to speak. Elaine Price opposed and does want to speak. Name.
Elaine Price.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You have 5 minutes.
Okay. So I live just down the street from this place. I've been there for 27 years. Traffic is increasing downtown, and I don't see how this will not increase the issue that we're having. Add 4th of July, Coeur d'Alene, cars park and block the sidewalk, and just, you know, he said 55 parking spots, 17 units. Nobody's gonna have one car. You know, our next door neighbor, it's a rental house, they have 5 cars. 17 units, 1 car, 34 parking spots, or 2 cars, 34 parking spots. You know, then add the commercial on top of it, or add, you know, friends coming over to visit, or barbecues, or what have you. It is gonna impact the area. Luckily, I don't have small kids now, but I did. That's where my kids grew up. And it is gonna have an impact in that area, huge impact in that area. Talked about water in that area. I agree, the sewer systems are, everything's archaic downtown in that area. It is the historical area. My house was built in 1920. That's the housing down there. That's what we want down there. That's the reason why I haven't moved from down there. That's the reason why people want to move in down there, is because of that part of Coeur d'Alene. And we're talking about changing it. I have nothing against change, absolutely nothing against change. But we need to be responsible when we do it. We need to look at the infrastructure of Coeur d'Alene. We've added so much to it already, and I don't feel like we're looking at the streets and how it affects the families that live down there. The influx of people, yeah, people want to move here. I understand why they want to move here because I live here. You guys have to understand that as well. But it doesn't mean that we have to keep adding and adding and adding so nobody wants to live here. We've got to think about the big picture. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, but please refrain from clapping. Bob McAdams is opposed and did not indicate whether he'd want to speak or not. Kathleen Atkins is opposed and did not want to speak. Eric Atkins opposed and did not want to speak. I would like to speak. You would like to speak? Sure, come on up.
Eric Atkins.
I'm sorry.
Eric Atkins.
Do you swear this statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, you have 5 minutes.
I came in rather neutral on the project, wrote opposed. I'm now actually more opposed, primarily echoing the concerns people expressed about the rental units. I didn't realize there were going to be rentals. I'd be more comfortable with condominiums, owner-occupied properties. And I'm also concerned with the appearance it does not really complement the downtown character that's around it. It's not bad looking, it is better looking than what's there now. And that was part of the reason I was less concerned, was I thought, well, it's better than what's there now, but I think the rental aspect of it tips me strongly against. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see here. Barb Crumbacker is opposed and does wish to speak. Okay. Lyndall Keek, I'm sorry, is opposed and does not wish to speak. Carl Cook is opposed and does not wish to speak. Ben Mills is opposed, did not indicate if he wanted to speak.
Ben Mello, and I'll speak.
Okay, Ben.
I'm the guy who was talked before. Do you need me to do it again, or?
And you gotta do it all over again.
Ben Mello.
Mello, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It's Portuguese.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Absolutely.
You have 5 minutes.
I'll make it quick. I'm going to echo pretty much what everyone else says. I live in downtown Coeur d'Alene. My wife grew up here. She's seen all the growth. I grew up in Rhode Island. We moved here 7 years ago, and the traffic is, I ride my bike. I get almost hit every day riding my bike down from where I live on Garden down to my office downtown. Traffic is just getting worse along 7th specifically, but I do go down Wallace and Garden primarily. I am opposed to this because I think that if they can make this work with 8 more units, they can make it look like it fits into the neighborhood better. That is going to be a lot better than putting 17 more units in. So I am opposed to this based on the fact that traffic is going to increase no matter what the city engineer says. I think that this adding another 9 units is going to be a detriment to our neighborhood. Also, I'd like to echo, I think owner occupied is a lot better than apartments. I've lived all over the country, and I see apartments, mixed-use apartments, as a failure, a major failure. I'd be happy to talk with the city department about it at a future time. I design airports for a living, so I'm in and out of the communities that I work in, and apartments in downtown, specifically in areas like Coeur d'Alene, just don't work. They bring the values of the areas down tremendously. And I will say something to the lady who was speaking before. My wife is a teacher at Sorensen, and we do have a kid that's going to be.
Can we address the microphone?
Oh,
so
my wife is a teacher at Sorensen, and we have a young child that's going to be going there. So unfortunately, we may bump your kid out.
All right. Thank you. Dallas. Yes, and you want to come on up? Okay. State your name.
Della Munich.
Sorry about the pronunciation. Do you swear the statement that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
So help me God.
You have
yes.
5 minutes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I too feel pretty much the same as everybody has already mentioned. It's a garden area. It's a garden district. And I don't feel like that goes with the garden district. I don't feel like the architect does. I'm not adverse to the change. However, I think that it's overpowering, and I too agree with the lady right here.
Can you address the microphone, please?
Yes, I had to point to her.
I know,
her
but
name.
we can't hear.
Even
and
though
we can't
I've
get-
only been there
You're on TV.
2 years.
Just to remind you.
Okay. But anyway, I am opposed to what I look at. Don't agree with the architect.
Okay.
Sorry.
Right. Thank you. Leslie Wood is opposed and did not want to speak. Coolman Wood is opposed and does want to speak. Name?
Dr. Kate Coolman-Wood.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
And you have 5 minutes.
So, local neighbor, 2 houses down from the proposed project. Some recommendations that I would like the staff to put as stipulations for approval of the project. One is the traffic. So as stated earlier, the city engineer stated that they did not feel there would be increased traffic. I would like to highlight the fact that the Social Security Administration building has been vacant for quite some time. As the influx of the population increases, which actually we enjoy, we have noticed an increase in traffic, which maybe not be represented due to the fact that the commercial spaces have not been used for so long, if he has any sort of metered data that he's been looking at. With the with the current traffic increase that we've seen in the last 3-4 years since I've owned my property, we've had no less than 4 accidents in the intersection of Wallace and 6th just while I've been home. And I'm a surgeon, so I'm not home very much. What we see is because of the loss of convention of like a north-south stop sign or an east-west yield sign in this city, since it seems to be random in the Garden District, people don't know when to stop, even though there's a clearly marked sign or a yield sign. It's just not in their convention. So one stipulation that I think would make this project slightly more palatable is to place some sort of speed bumps, not roundabouts, because of course that would take more construction, but just speed bumps in the road approaching these higher density properties. That would encourage people to mindfully stick in the speed limits that they're supposed to have. The second thing that we would, or that I would like to see is I would like to see the fabric of the sidewalk not interrupted by driveways. That's something that we see commonly in suburban developments. We don't see that in the historic downtown. What I'm specifically talking about is opposed to the arterial of 7th or infill street of 7th, the residential street of Wallace. There's a current driveway there that would then allow the residents of the new development, whether it's 8 or 17 units, to cross in. I think that from a traffic flow management, if you took out the entrance to the parking lot on Wallace and just had them entrance through 7th, through the alley on 7th, that would decrease the traffic flow on Wallace itself because it wouldn't be an in and out. The third thing for traffic management is on the alleyway between the truly residential streets of Mr. Beckman's house and then the commercial realtor who currently has a VBRO in the front. If you put bollards, if you required bollards in the alley so that the alley wasn't a thoroughfare, in my opinion, that would help considerably from people driving through the alley and coming out where our children ride their bikes and the people are actually walking to the yoga studio. The yoga studio truly is a commercial space, but the businesses that are in there are a commercial photographer where people walk to and a yoga studio where people walk to. So they're not really driving cars, nor are they utilizing that parking lot. The parking lot associated with the Garden Street Yoga maybe at any given time has maybe 3 or 4 cars in it. And then the other is Red Brick Art Studio, which again, the artists walk to because they all live in the neighborhood. So those are some recommended suggestions in addition to the current height requirement. With the proposed 17 units, the next concern is the rent that will be gathered from those 17 units. As a small business owner, I completely understand your want to maximize your ROI and that more units would provide that. But if you are sold on this being an actual apartment, I would like to see you maximize your ROI by maximizing the high-end rent that you could achieve from a more luxury type 8 units. That would then allow us to have the type of renters like myself would have been as we came to this community 3 years ago to start my practice. We literally could not find suitable housing for our young family. If there was a large 2 or 3 bedroom apartment, we certainly wouldn't have been able to pay the rent required for that, but that stock wasn't around. The stock that was around was several lower apartment complexes, not similar to what we were used to in Houston, Atlanta, or Seattle. So with the current R17 rating, you could do that.
Good timing.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Very good timing. Mitchell Wood does want to speak.
Mitchell Wood.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
I listed on that sheet neutral and then opposed, only because I was
I
filling
know.
my wife with opposed. But I do want to say, when this came across in the mail, and myself and Mr. Beckman took a look at it, and we got up on Google Earth, I want to say that this actually has the chance to be an exciting project for the Garden District, which is not what we've heard at all today. And I know my neighbors, and I've talked to them, because I think this can be distracting, what we see here on the screen. What I hope we're talking about is what the role the city plays in things like this. And to continue a Planning 101 lesson, I interpret a city in two ways. There's a constitutional order and then a representational order. The constitutional order is the streets, the sidewalks, the planting strips. Those are the things that we as citizens have control over. Inside that constitutional order, the grid, if you will, we have the representational order, and that is where private development comes in. And that changes over time. That gets torn down, put back up, torn down, put back up. It gets more dense, less dense. But what doesn't change is the constitutional order. The streets are always there. They'll be here long after we're gone. The sidewalks will always be there. And to echo Dr. Coleman-Wood, I would like to propose that one of the conditions be to repair the constitutional order on Wallace Avenue by getting rid of the curb cut that exists into the parking lot. The previous development for the 2 single-family homes did that as well, Chad Oakland. He was outside. I said, what are you going to do with this curb cut? He says, man, we're getting rid of it. We're coming through the alley. I'm like, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. Now, whether or not you can do it, whether or not that works, I don't know. But I would like to see that, because I think the slide we saw before that showed the 3-axis, the 3 ways to get into the parking was off of 7th, but I think that's disingenuous. I think most folks are coming from Northwest Boulevard, and they're going to be coming down Wallace to access this site. Not many folks are coming down 7th to get to this. So if the arrows were changed, you would find them coming through the alley behind Mr. Beckman's house. You'd find them coming down Wallace. So I guess I'm repeating what was already said, and I didn't want to do that. And also, because this is a representation, and I hope my neighbors can see this too, this absolutely can change. Mr. Stauffer go tomorrow and do something completely different. It doesn't matter. But I think density is a good thing. And I think the more dense we can get, the more intelligently dense we can get is actually better. Because more people are going to continue to come. That's not going to change. So I'm okay with the increase in density. This we shouldn't even be talking about, because we're here at a planning meeting. So I just want to leave it at that. So,
thank you.
A politician. Huh? A politician.
Vienna Weholt is opposed, do not indicate want to speak. Martin Stacy, opposed, do not indicate if you want to speak.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
I can't hear you, sir.
Is that Martin Stacy? I think that's
Oh.
Mr. Stacy,
Who
I
is it?
think. Here, we'll find out his name.
Martin Stacy.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he is Martin Stacy. That's what I thought.
Say your name one more time.
For the record, my name is Martin Stacy.
Thank you. Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I really do.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you for your service, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. I've lived in the neighborhood for 48 years, bought my house a couple of blocks up on Foster, and I've enjoyed watching this neighborhood, the Garden District, the area where the application is, thrive as a residential single-family neighborhood. It is one of Coeur d'Alene's certainly oldest neighborhoods, well-established, and clearly, if you look at the new construction in the neighborhood, the personal investment, it has been in single-family homes. These people myself included, all of us who have remodeled and improved our vintage homes, have relied on the application of the policies and the goals of the comprehensive plan that has been, established under the 1972 Act way back when. I applaud those people. I applaud the builder of the two houses next to the applicant's property, single-family homes in the style of the 20s. And those people have come to rely, their private investments have come to rely on your wisdom and your faith that you will recognize these neighborhoods for what they are. A lot of working class people, such as myself, have just put a lot of our lives into these homes and these neighborhoods. So I ask you to please think not so much of the economic viability of 17 versus 9 rental units, but what about the economic viability of the two houses next to it? They seem to work. It is possible to preserve these qualities that we see in this old neighborhood without overindulging what is clearly too much of a burden on this historic area. Too much of a burden. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Pielek is opposed and don't want to speak. Sharon Kearns is opposed and does want to say something. Oh. Okay.
Sharon Kearns.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes, Sharon.
I live on 7th Street, right across from this proposed construction. And but my main concern, it's an ugly building now, and I am definitely not opposed to it being made more palatable looking. That would be great. My main concern is parking. And I know there's assurances that, yes, there will be enough parking, but living there and observing how the parking goes with the Social Security building being there. The other thing that we forget is that there's a wedding chapel across the street from this, and nobody uses the parking behind the wedding chapel. Everyone parks on the street and in this building's parking lot. And so when we start adding more people parking there, not just as an office, but 24 hours a day coming and going, that will definitely make an impact. And the other thing is that just looking at this now, I can tell you those people are not just going to park in the parking lot, they're going to be parking on the street. And my house across the street from there has beautiful shade trees, and in my experience, everyone wants to park under the shade trees. And so that's what I'm envisioning is no one parking in their parking lot, but parking on the street. And so, yes, I have some big reservations. And of course, also about what type of apartments will be there and what type of people will be living there. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Faye Sweeney is opposed, did not indicate whether you want to speak. Nicole, I'm sorry.
I'm Wayne Sweeney. I think you may have mentioned my name.
I can't hear you, sir. I'm sorry.
I think he wants to talk.
Yeah. And what is your name, sir?
My name is Wayne Sweeney. You may have called me first, but my last name was mispronounced, if you did.
I probably did mispronounce your name. I apologize for that, but,
I'm the only Wayne who's been called so far.
okay, well, if you're not on here, we'll get you on there. But
Well,
just,
I think my name was first, but
all right, well, just state your name one more time.
Wayne Sweeney.
Okay, do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I affirm.
Okay, you got 5 minutes, Wayne.
Okay. I've also lived on Foster Avenue for over 44 years. And this is a project I signed up as neutral, and because although I don't like the idea of a much more dense use of property in our neighborhood, because it's already been testified about the character of the neighborhood. It's mostly single-family residential. The multifamily units there are mostly quadplexes. When this project came to my attention, having lived in the neighborhood, I looked around, and I'm familiar with most of it. A quadplex is the most dense use we have in the neighborhood in the Garden District that I could find. On the other hand, the reason I'm neutral is because I know Dick Stauffer and Monty Miller very well. And I'm familiar with their projects. They make good quality projects. They're going to be the owners of this property. I'm familiar with their ownership of other projects, and they're top-notch managers, owners, and very responsible. The problems that I'm concerned about are the increased density, and one technical point in particular that I would like to have Dick address when he gets up here, and actually Dr. Wood made the point very well, is why is the near doubling of density required on this half acre for this project? I've not, it's a little hard to hear at times in the back of the room, but I have not heard the justification for that. Why is a doubling necessary? Dr. Wood's idea was to have, suggestion was, why not consider larger apartments to attract perhaps a different type of tenant to the neighborhood, more compatible use in the neighborhood. I would like to have Dick address that when he responds. And,
Okay.
Those are the points that I wanted to make.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Nicole Betts is opposed and does not wish to speak. Nicole Erickson, opposed and does not wish to speak. Michelle
Whitaker?
Nudiker, I'm sorry, again, is opposed but didn't indicate.
Michael? No,
Michael.
Michael Whitaker.
Michael, I'm sorry, and does not wish to speak. Tracy Dye is opposed and does wish to make a statement? Oh.
Hello, I'm Tricia Dye.
Do you swear the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
You have 5 minutes.
Okay, well, I live just across the street next to the church and kitty corner across from this, down on Wallace. And the parking is a big issue. When they had the wedding chapel, there's parking up and down the streets, and I can barely get out of my driveway because it does go into Wallace. And they park, the cars don't park, but then they have those big metal, what are they called, on the end of the cars or trucks
yeah.
for the boats and
The hitches.
Hitch. So they have those that go into my driveway. So I have to be very careful. Plus, there are cars, when Chad was building those two houses across the street, they took out the driveways and put in straight, so they park right behind mine. So when there's a lot of snow, it's very difficult to get in and out of my driveway. Not that that's your problem about this, but anyway. But the fact is, there's a lot of traffic. There's more and more and more traffic on that street. And there's a lot of brand-new families. I was a teacher for 40 years, so I consider the kids. And there's a lot of brand-new families. There's a family that is a young couple that will be having young kids. They've all bought these houses around this property, and they are fixing up their properties. They're fixing up their houses, or they bought the new house, and those kids are going to be walking to Sorensen. And they're going to have more and more traffic on Wallace to get through there. Also, there's churches on all the corners to go over to the Catholic church, which most of the people in this garden district walk to. They're going to have to go, there's going to be more traffic. And I really think there should be, I request that there's a traffic study. I don't know exactly what that means, but somehow to see if there were that many more people there, what it's going to do to the people that are walking to school or walking to the churches or riding their bikes. Because it's almost getting to the point where kids can't ride their bikes to school because it's just not safe for them with the amount of traffic that there is there. And I live on the corner where those at least 4 accidents have happened in the last couple of years on Wallace and 6th Street. It is, I've heard, this is the first time I've heard about it, was the historical heart area. And what it said in some of those things that were up earlier is it should remain as is. There are vintage homes. I live in one of them. I bought my house because it was old and, it's over 100 years old. And the area all looks that way. And Chad did a great job of building those 2 new houses next to this that look old. And I would certainly request that whatever goes here has that same look to it. Right now, it's low, and it's the Social Security building is low, so it's kind of nondescript. So yes, it's ugly, I agree, but it's nondescript because it's low. And if you go high, that 45 feet is going to be higher than any other building that is there, including the, right now you have, it's sort of out of context because you don't see the other buildings around it and the other houses where they are on their height. And if this went way up, it's still going to be, it's going to be out of proportion, I think. The reason that the church across the street from this and the school, they're historical. They've been there forever. My question is, how do you get rid of this and put in single-family housings there? I mean, do I have to buy that property and then come to you and say, okay, I want to rezone this? Because I would think, yes, she's going yes, because I really think that this is a neighborhood that should be all single-family homes. And they should be people owner-occupied. Because yes, this realtor does have, or my neighbor bought that beautiful house, but there are people there that are, they're not parking in their garage and they're outside on the street all the time too, and they come and go and they're, so the owner occupied really takes care of their homes, their gardens, everything around them. If there's trash in the street after the 4th of July, we're all picking it up and tossing it into the trash cans, things like that. So, and again, the water and the sewer, I think, is an issue. Mine backs up a lot. And let me see what else I had here. And also, the property values are going to go down depending on, I looked around, I agree with this gentleman that said there's 4 or 5 4 or 5 units per multiple unit properties. And I would think that would,
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I would think that we should stay to the lower amount if we're going to do something there, because you get more than that. The one at the end of Wallace on 4th, I've heard that there's a lot of drugs going on in there. We certainly don't want that in the neighborhood with all these young families that have moved into the area.
Okay.
So, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Tom Martin is neutral and does not want to speak. Jelaine Weholt is opposed and did not indicate whether or not you wanted to speak. Elaine Doyle is opposed and had a question mark whether you want to speak or not.
I'll speak.
All righty, come on down.
Slowly.
Take your time.
I'll speak and walk
It's okay. You can use a break. Just tell me your name one more time.
Eileen Doyle.
Do you swear the statement about you give is the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
I've owned my home for 25 years. I have a block from this proposal. I've watched what has developed over the years. I'm requesting parking and traffic studies in the area. I've witnessed multiple accidents at the corner that just got a parking or a stop sign. We have been inundated with all of the downtown events from Spokane and all over the rest of the city. We live close enough that the entire world comes to Coeur d'Alene for all the big events. And what was a beautiful neighborhood to live in, I call it the tree section. It's known as the Garden District, is one of the highest taxed locations in the city, beyond the fort grounds, which is now a paid community because of parking problems. You have parking problems in Midtown. Now they're doing a study for that. The bottom line is everything's kind of out of control in a controlled way, I should say. I'm not trying to besmirch anyone, but I've watched what's happened. I'm not opposed to development per se, but I don't want my property value to be destroyed in the process. And let's talk about parking on my block, which is a half a block away. 2 houses have gotten vacation rentals. One gave notice properly, one did not. One of those 2 is now advertising for 16 beds. The other one, I have no idea how many occupants are allowed in these dwellings because it's not real clear. If you're talking about an apartment as opposed to a condo, what are the occupancy levels? If it's a residential home, that is a rental. What are the occupancy requirements? How many cars or trucks are allowed? I live next door to a rental that has regularly 8 cars or trucks at a time. It's taken over the whole block. It's blocked my walk. You can see I'm disabled. What do I do when it's snowing and icy? You know, how do I get to my car? What if I can't park my car because of all the events downtown? Bottom line, the parking, the vacation rentals, the drugs, the homeless walking through, to a fresh start that no longer exists, but nobody took it off of the homeless people's maps. They're still coming in every day. We've had 4 events in 1 year just with homeless-related issues. My point is, I love my home. I don't want to stay. I don't want to leave. I want to do something that works for all of us who have invested in our homes and we care about our homes, and we work darn hard to keep them and maintain our properties and our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Monty Miller is in favor and didn't want to mention anything at this time. You're good. Justin Fro, I'm sorry again, is in favor, but did not wish to speak. Hillman Robert is opposed and did not wish to speak. Okay, that's the last. Is anyone, okay, come on up and we'll get you to sign up later. And just, your name?
My name is Faye Sweeney. I did sign up, but
Oh,
things went a little fast at some point.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Over here, so.
Do you swear that the statement about you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, you have
Thank
5
you.
minutes.
I have had a little bit of trouble hearing at the back of the room, so I may be.
You can't hear me back there?
Just a little bit. There was some problems at one point, so I
sorry
may
about
have
that.
misunderstood something. But I would love to hear later clarification about the parking. I heard a number of 55 car parks, and I saw a diagram with one of the arrows pointing to the parking lot that's north of the site. So I assume the 55 included that lot, but I also heard at the beginning that that lot is not a part of the considerations tonight. It's not being rezoned, I assume is what that meant. But I'm confused about whether that parking lot could be turned into a building site, or are those parking car parks dedicated in some way to the GTE building so that we don't have to fear that another apartment building might be built on that parking lot. So I'd like to hear some clarification of that.
Okay.
And then I share the concern that many of my neighbors have. I've lived for 44 years in this neighborhood, and I have the concerns about historical character, which I know is really important for Coeur d'Alene, and I'm sure it is for you. And so I know there is a design commission. I am curious about whether a project like this comes under the purview of the design commission. Would this design have to go before them? Because I feel sure that there's a way to make this building more respectful of the neighborhood and of the design that's in that neighborhood. And it's a neighborhood that has, I've watched, I think there were times in the past when I wondered what was going to happen to my neighborhood. And I've become so proud to see Sorensen built, rebuilt, remodeled, and young families moving into this neighborhood. And I think the historical value of it has been something that has saved my neighborhood. And I really think that a little more respect should be paid in the design to that. So I would encourage you to think about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir. You wish to speak?
Yes.
Come on up. We'll get you to sign up later.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't know the process.
Oh, it's okay. Your name?
I'm Walter Burns.
Do you swear that the statement you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You have 5 minutes, Walter.
Thank you. I haven't lived here for years and years. In fact, I'm relatively new to the Garden District. But this is why I left California. Yes. I have seen so many towns and so many neighborhoods over the years, old neighborhoods where they put in apartments that don't fit, that don't belong, and it starts a trend. What concerns me most about this is the precedent. Yeah, okay, we're going to do that here. We'll you know, the next people will come over and say, well, the next group will come say you zone this R34. What, you know, so that's the precedent, and they'll want to be doing it more. The parking lot behind, you know, and various other places. Once these things start peppering a neighborhood like the Garden District, you know, it changes it. It changes it. I've seen it in other places. And the Garden District is an absolute treasure. I mean, that's why we live here. This neighborhood is what brought us up here. It is a very special place. The neighbors are very special people. We've been welcomed in. And I don't want to see that changed by a bunch of apartments and more traffic coming in. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else want to speak that did not sign up before I call the applicant to address some of the issues? And I do thank you for all being here and speaking. This is why, as Sean pointed out before, the system does work. And Vic, you want to come up and address some of the issues, perhaps?
I'll try.
Okay. You have some time.
I've got a little laundry list here, and I think there's a couple of real easy ones. Yes, the property is intended to be a rental property. It is not intended to be condos. It is intended to be a for rent property. Yes, it will have an element of mixed use. We'll retain the lower level office space and the switch gear for the phone company on the lower level.
When you say lower level, Dick, you're meaning the basement?
Basement,
or the,
yes.
Okay.
The access points, I think we would be willing to work with the city and the neighborhood and everyone for what was best and safest, I think. I think a lot of times we in the business, we like to see multiple exit points because we think that diffuses the traffic and that gets the queuing effect away and gives everybody a cleaner opportunity. But if powers that be and people thought that central access points, I think that's kind of the beauty of the site, is there's a lot of flexibility there. And I think anybody that had some expertise in that area probably through the building permit process, should we be allowed to continue on, I think that was certainly something that we would welcome input and criticism on. The traffic, I think you could visit any neighborhood or district in town and you'll get a line of people saying the traffic is awful and it's getting worse. And I won't diffuse that, but I don't know that's unique to this application or this neighborhood, or that it's necessarily pertinent here. I think we will fall back on the data which shows that office buildings generate a certain amount of occupants and car parks, and we are lessening that load with what we are proposing here. The car parking, and 8 to 5, the weekend changes a little bit, but 8 and 5 are the busy times for homes as well as businesses. That's when people are coming and going, and that is so if the number of cars is different and the business of moving cars is somewhat the same, I don't know how we are exacerbating a situation with this request, just on sheer numbers of cars involved. Now the more difficult things, the historical value of things. I'm going to offer that, first of all, the building that we're talking about has been there for 55 years. It's not the new kid on the block. Everyone has seen this building. There's probably a few people in the audience that have been here longer than that building, but not very many, I'm guessing. So that has a toehold in the neighborhood as well. Is there, design is so subjective. It's a very slippery slope, and we are in the business. We are very sensitive to it. I understand the passionate arguments about what's dear to whom. But unless the city wants to get in the business of dictating, and some do, sometimes you choose to go down that road. I think the other group of policymakers has certain areas that they want to get into. I think you probably have dabbled in it as well. And when it comes back to us that's a decision that's being made, then we'll respond accordingly, I guess. That is being outside influenced. But I will once again indicate this is preliminary sketching, and it is not a definitive design. It is indicated to show massing and size of building. 2 stories, that's showing something that's about mid-30s, low 30s, probably tall. So that's how that's the amount of space and the amount of shade and shadow that it's going to dictate. That's what the intent of the exercise is. An actual design process is a lengthy process, as many of you know, that will involve tens of thousands of dollars, and without a a license to move forward, we're probably not going to do that. Mr. Sweeney's question about why are the 8 units important to us? And I kind of glossed over that, but I think it's worth mentioning again, and I think John started out with that point. And I don't know what the mechanism is, but what we're proposing to do is give up some of our grandfathered commercial space. We're trading commercial space for residential space, and that is that's why we're trying to get the other units. We're trying to fill up that space with residential, and we've got this this infrastructure and stuff that supports a certain amount of development, and we can keep our commercial space and do our 9 units, and we're right here, and I'm not here. Or we can trade out more residential and get the blessing to build 17 units instead of 9. So I'm not sure if that completely answered the question, but that's what we're trying to do. And then that commercial space goes away forever. Because, it's grandfathered in as a non-conforming use. And as that goes away, the part that we give up is gone.
I've got a question. You heard about the building design itself not complementing the neighborhood with some of the older homes that are a mixed use of different designs. That design, I'm not saying it's a bad design, did you look at designing something that would fit more architecturally with the surrounding areas that would work for a project like this with that many units?
I can assure you after this meeting tonight, that will be a topic of discussion.
Well, I thought so.
There's a couple of circumstances, I'm sure you understand. We've got something that we're starting with, that we're trying not to, undo the brick facade and things that we've got that are working for us. And then I will also offer that the Garden District is Sherman to Montana, 4th to 11th, I believe, is and there is a lot of stuff in the Garden District. And I'm not, once again, I think as you would so delicately put it, I'm not here to judge and there are some stately, grand, historical homes and some things, and there's some schlock in there too. So we will certainly have that discussion internally, that if that is a better solution, should we be granted to move forward, that you hear it enough that it catches your ear.
Well, you can certainly, I appreciate our position here. We say, yeah, go ahead, do your number of units you want, and we just don't know what the end result's going to be. So, I mean, we see something like this, and that's kind of what you get tied into. Sure. Unfortunately.
This is very, and one of the other things, and this is, and I hate to stand up here and say, trust me, and I think we got a nice accolade from Mr. Sweeney. We've been doing this for a long time. We've touched a few things in town, and I think we're fairly well respected and doing things the right way. We're not going away. We take care of our properties. We want nothing more than to be successful and be accepted in the neighborhood. We do not want to be the neighborhood parking lot, which is what we've been for the last couple of years, and we've been very accepting of that. Anybody who wants to park there kind of can, right, unless you camp, and then we chase you out. But we want to put our property to work, and we think there's a need for downtown apartment style, and we do see them as upscale apartments.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
A question, just to make sure someone in the audience asked about the idea of having single-family homes on the site. It's pretty clear based on what you shared about the in perpetuity infrastructure supporting the telecom footprint for Frontier that you could never, they're there for life. Correct? That infrastructure is for life?
They are there longer than I am.
Yeah, okay. So really just so everyone understands, replatting it for single-family homes is not on the table.
And it's just financially disastrous.
Yeah.
I have a quick question as well, because I heard a question asked, and maybe you can perhaps answer it.
we're only talking about the parcel of land that this building
That is
sits
correct,
on.
and there was
There was
that's
a
a good
question that was
question.
asked about the parking lots to the north.
Yeah.
That constituted the whole 55. So I want to make sure you have a chance to address that.
Yes, the request is these 4 lots right here. That's the request for the additional zoning. This parking by your zoning ordinance allows us to support this with that parking. So it's not, and maybe staff wants to say that better than I did.
We've been having an internal discussion over here. You probably heard us whispering, and we have been discussing that. And it does support it based on the special use permit. However, staff would like to see that it be tied to this property. The only way that we can see that that happens is at a deed restriction, basically saying that as long as the building survives, the parking will stay and support it so that it doesn't get sold off separately.
And I think that's typical. We would certainly expect that as a new age building permit going forward would be required to support the parking contractually, basically. Yes, and we're in agreement with that.
Yeah.
You heard comments about keeping the neighborhood like it is and historic and so forth. Can you explain to me what the benefit would be to the community, to the neighborhood, exchanging commercial for residential?
I think certainly from our standpoint, it's putting the building to work. The building's sitting vacant right now, Peter. It's not vacant. The lower level is fully occupied. There's a tenant and our phone gear down there. The main level is sitting empty, and from a property owner standpoint, that's not really acceptable. There is a definite need for downtown housing right now. I think that's a very well-established need. I don't think if you're paying attention, you can see that. We basically enabled those 2 homes on the corner to be built. We dealt with Chad Oakland to put those into play down there. So that we saw that as that was the place to shrink the site that was more neighborhood friendly as opposed to the 7th Street exposure, which we saw as more accepting to multifamily and a better.
Where are the homes on that map?
Better fit.
That you're referring to?
They are these 2 homes right here.
ADU
Those are
back.
within the last year. Those were part of the larger property.
What street is that? That's
That's Wallace.
But what is the, it's Sixth.
6th and Wallace. And Miss Bennett, who testified earlier, she lives in this house right here, and she's supportive of the project.
So even if we did not, if the special use permit was not approved, that commercial would still go away, most likely, into residential.
Well, and that's where the dynamics of the economics don't work for us, Peter. We'd have to spend as much money making that into residential as we would just adding residential to the property. And so we're not just gonna basically throw it away, is what the suggestion kind of is.
I'm not suggesting you throw it away. I'm struggling through the increased density from 9 to 17. And I heard some, well, that's good because commercial is going to go away. So getting those extra 8 units is being, is more, losing the commercial is more invaluable, or not more valuable, more important to the community than adding 8 additional units.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's, I even understand the analogy, but that is the essence of what's happening. The business model, we've got this infrastructure that supports a certain amount of development. The office parking is considerably higher than residential parking. So what happens is now our infrastructure will support more residential than it will commercial. More simply put, a residential property, say, is 700 or 800 feet and needs 2 parking spots. A business needs 1 per 300. So all of a sudden you've got more area with less people in it and less cars required This is getting way more.
By going to residential, by
yes.
increasing the residential
Yes.
aspect.
Yes.
But Dick, how do you respond to the folks who are already suffering under a sewer system and water supply system that it's in failure? And if you're going to load additional units onto an already stressed, old system?
That is something that I'm probably not qualified to
Yeah,
to
because you're
address.
pushing new goods
I think
into
that,
old
once again, your
pipes that-
staff has been, brought into this, and they've commented that they don't have an issue with it. If there are some things that need reconstruction, as much as I'm not going to volunteer, there will be some things probably in a building permit process to say, well, by the way, you need to do this, replace this wooden water main, or clean up the sewer in this area, and I know Chairman Messina's bumped into that on numerous occasions over the years, but traditionally there's a development component that's brought into, and really if it's a problem, it has nothing to do with us. I mean, it needs to be cleaned up independently.
Problem is the ripple effect on the adjacencies.
Sure.
I don't think that we want to approve something knowing full well that there's a problem in the overall sewer system currently in play. And are we in a position to exacerbate that problem further and cause more issues down the road?
Yeah, I would think that you would have to rely on your staff at this point as saying that they don't have any issues with the sewer and the water. And
yet we're hearing it in the audience.
Yeah,
I'm hearing it in the audience, so. Okay.
Okay, anything else?
What?
Okay.
Just,
Oh, John, sorry.
Dick, I just want a couple folks, as they testified, I don't think we're completely clear on this trading, as we call it, if you will. So there's commercial in this switching gear down in the basement. And then the whole first full floor plate is potentially
residential.
commercial. Well, it could be commercial.
Yes, could be all
Tomorrow,
commercial.
Today, you could
as
put,
it is right now.
There's a T1 or whatever they call them lines in there. You could put a call center in there tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And 8 units above. 9 rather, thank you. And we'd have basically the same mass as we're discussing now, that maybe could be softened further to respect as you're going to go back and tweak the design and morph the design and whatnot. So really, we're not even talking about the size of the box here.
No.
We're talking about, would we want a call center and 9 units? Or as the gentleman said that came forward, 17 might make a better project than 8 because the trading and the use. I think, my opinion, 17 high quality, these aren't going to be low rent.
No, I think just the location and the cost of the property is going to dictate that they're in the upper end of rentals.
So I understand that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing testimony at this time, and I'm going to let the commissioners make some comments before we call for a roll call. And John, start it.
I'll jump in there, and not with a motion, but I think we maybe want to chat a little bit. But the comp plan here I have in front of me talks about, there's going to be intense pressure on infill in the heart of the city, as well as the whole city. And it talks about seeking a balance between commercial, residential, and mixed use in the historic heart that allows for increased density in harmony with the residential uses that are there. It also states that infill regulations provide opportunities and incentives for redevelopment, and mixed-use development will reflect the scale of the existing neighborhoods while allowing an increase in density. So we've talked about the mass and the scale of this thing, and I think the mass and the scale doesn't change whether it's 17 or 9. We've talked about that. The parking exceeds the requirements. You know, I think that, you know, the design could be tweaked a little bit, but I think this could be a potentially good fit, and I think as we've talked in our workshops with the next comp plan update with respect of infill, it's going to be a bigger item as the city runs out of wide open space. We're going to see more and more of this. If a city doesn't grow, you know, it's in decline, and we're running out of wide open spaces, and infill is going to carry the day and allow this city not to decline and to grow. And I think this developer with this project, with this track record, in this location, with the trading and trade-offs that we would enable him would pull off, I think, what we would see as we've talked all night about quality infill projects, and I think this has the great potential of being one of those.
Thank you, John.
I'd like to comment further on Commissioner Ingles. First of all, thank you to the public for coming. It's a long night, and I appreciate all of the concerns that you raised. I'm certainly sympathetic to questions around traffic and parking and walkability for my fellow Sorensen parents and neighbors. Given the fact that for that profile, the shape might exist no matter what, we actually have an opportunity, I think, as a planning commission to do exactly that, is to manage the infill in a responsible way and the density. I appreciate the conditions that the staff added. I think those are helpful, specifically the height limitation. I think that keeps it to the profile that might exist anyway. And some of the landscaping and landscaping recommendations and conditions. So I think this is an opportunity. The parking needs are met. We can keep it within the profile that might exist anyway. I think the questions around parking and traffic are part of a broader question in the community. But I appreciate all the public comment and Mr. Stouffer for responding to those. This to me is an example and opportunity of how we as a planning commission can help with the goals of the comprehensive plan in a responsible way. It doesn't necessarily resonate popularly with the community, and I understand that, but thinking about what's already allowable and what would be different, I think it could be a lot worse in terms of the incremental change.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
I disagree with John. I think that the mass scale does change appreciably. But my issue is one about we need more housing. That's true, we do. But we also need to have some type of stability in our comp plan and in the commitments we've made to the community and to neighborhoods and so forth. We've had certain standards in this area for a long time. And this, to me, we're changing it. It's a historic area. We're making a modification to increase the density from 9 to 17. I believe that is a significant change to a historical area, and that reason I don't support it. Now, the person that's proposing this, the firm, the individual, they do wonderful work. I agree with her, but they will do a good job. They're very committed. They're well known in the community. They're just the type of people you want to have in your community. However, with this, I cannot support this as it is, because I think we've made a commitment, especially in the historic area, to have certain types of zoning and staying to that. They can put in 9 units if they so desire. May not pencil out, but it can be done. And therefore, I cannot support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I have a comment, Mr. Chair. I think if anybody's been watching us on TV over the last year and a half or so, there's been some consistent threads of conversation. And it has to do with growth, has to do with infill, it has to do with preservation of an inherent community archetype. However, those things are sometimes in conflict, as you've heard tonight. For example, infrastructure like sewer and water doesn't get serviced in a modern way unless the tax base increases. How does the city manage to upgrade all those things without increased tax base? And like Commissioner Ingalls, I tend to agree that a community that's not growing is in decline. And you can shake your head about that, but it's just a fundamental truth. The other part of the problem is, not the problem, is to just recognize the identity of the community. We are a resort community. There is a pulse of population that occurs every year. This is a fact. This is a truth. And as that occurs, as a resort community, what happens? What happens is people get to see what a wonderful community we have. This stimulates interest. People want to move here. People want to live here. And this garden district is how many blocks from the center of the town? Is it 3 blocks? It's 3 blocks from downtown Coeur. And typically what you see is a point of gravity. You know, people want to live near the downtown Coeur. I've had the blessing of having my kids go to Sorensen. Sorensen as a community, as a school, is a remarkable asset. And people I can see want to live near that school. Well, why not have the opportunity for more families to make use of that? Not everybody can afford a single-family home in the Garden District. Those homes don't turn over all the time. There are people who have owned their homes for 50 years or even longer. And this is the kind of difficulty we face as a planning commission, is managing and balancing these sometimes conflicting desires and the complexity of managing change. And I think one of the commitments I've made is to be an architect of positive change. I think, candidly, as a neighbor, you have a neighbor who's an architect owner. I can't imagine a better neighbor, someone who is actually going to have a desire to improve the community through a lens of architectural excellence. And again, I'm not suggesting to you that there's a perfect answer here. No answer is going to satisfy every member of the Garden District. In fact, I made a count here. There were 3 yeses and I think something like 25 noes. But as a planning commission, we have to look at the larger picture of how do we help be, again, architects of positive change. And I candidly will support this proposal. I think it's in keeping with the need for infill. It's in keeping with the need for additional housing. I can again imagine a better steward of that space than an architect who's going to take into consideration the historic nature of the Garden District. I think there's also, someone kind of spoke about constitutionality. I mean, there's kind of property rights at play here too. This individual owns that space. You know, how could we resist or somehow in some way minimize or diminish that individual's right to extract the economic benefits of the ownership of that property, again, in keeping with trying to preserve the nature of the Garden District, and again, being a good neighbor, which is not in contest. It's not contested here tonight. So I'm going to be in support of this proposed special use permit, and I think it's a difficult decision, but I think it's the right one.
Thank you. Well put. Well put.
I'm going to just
point out that we're not taking anything from him. He's requesting something from us. You said about property rights.
Well, in a sense, he wants to, you know, what we're talking about is 8 units.
He's
8
restricting
units
to
is an
improve his
economic
property.
is an economic difference. I mean,
Well,
there's a difference.
that's right, but we're not taking that from him.
You're
He's
correct.
asking us to give it to him. There's a difference, I
Well, in
think.
a sense, if we did not allow it, someone could make the case that we're preventing him from having the full benefit of his property.
Excuse me. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I think that, again, I'm not suggesting that my position is the same position of everyone in the audience. I already told you, there's 3 yeses and 25 nos. But again, this is this individual's property, and he's proposing to develop it in a way that meets the economic, the considerations to construct it in such a way, whether the footprint is, again, this is not contested. The footprint is the same, whether it's 8 units or 17. It doesn't change. No, don't be very clear. He can build it to the same height. It would be 45 feet, and he could put 8 units or 17 units in that same footprint. It will not change. I think it's really important to understand. I think there's some confusion here.
Does anyone
No.
live in the garden district?
No, ma'am, I'm sorry. I cannot have any comments from the public at this time. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to also point out that we're talking about who supports it. We've been taught and trained and indoctrinated, and correctly so, that we try to get as much data as we can and make a decision in front of everybody. But we don't do it based on how many people want this or how many people don't want this. It's just a matter of getting the conversation going. So our vote on something may be 100% of the people may be for what we're going to do, 100% people may be against what we're going to do, but we make the decision based on what our input is, not on a vote counting of the people. I don't know if that makes any sense, but when you go through and read, are you for this, or are you against it, that's great. But we don't take little tab marks on that. We wait for this discussion to come in to make our decisions.
Okay. So much great input on all sides, and I do respect the work of Miller Stauffer. They do bring amazing projects to the city. This is a difficult building. It is a dinosaur. It is it's dead in the water, sitting where it is. So it serves no purpose except as a, center for something that we don't even know exists underground. And as I said, the volume of this is not going to change, whether we allow them to go forward with it just the way it is, or whether the volume and the space that this building takes up is going to remain the same. I do agree with the historical part of this, and I'm also in the business, so I don't look at the aesthetics that are on the screen. I will urge that the historical, if we look back at some unique brick apartment buildings in Spokane on the South Hill, you see the ornamentation, you see the limestone parapets, you see all those elements that make it charming and historical. What I want this to do is to sit comfortably in this neighborhood. It has brick. Brick is part of the era. That is not a problem. But we need to address the physicality of it, and we're not here as design judgment. We don't. I don't say it's ugly or it's not ugly or it's prettier. That's not what we do. But I will say that Miller Stauffer has heard your voice, and I think they are going to sleep on it tonight and start digging out the details. And that is what we will review at another stage. But I do think that we need people to be able to live downtown that don't and cannot afford to buy these fancy condos. Bed count, how many bedrooms are in each unit, will have a big impact. It has how many cars. We know that a 1-bedroom has 1 car. Do we have 3 bedrooms with 3 cars? That's all part of the parcel of this. So we can't determine that right now. We don't have enough on our plate to do that. But I do think that we heard some very good things about traffic management, not 3 entrances, reduced Wallace impact. Don't allow traffic to go through on that laneway where kids could be riding on their bicycle. I think we need to address that with bollards and speed bumps and be more traffic aware and neighborhood aware and children aware, because we do not want this to have a negative impact on your lives today. And I think if we look at infrastructure and improve the water, improve the sewer, you will have a better impact to your life. And that's what we're looking for as benefit out of this. I think Miller Stauffer has heard all of this. I think they'll take it on board. And to me, the volume, the shape, they can do tomorrow exactly what they want to do and keeps, 9 units, and it'll be the same building. It'll just, the additional units will just be a little more complex. But it's the same volume, same height, same square footage, and the parking is already there. So that's not going to change. And they're maintaining all the green space. I think they're bringing a good project to us. We just need to ignore the visuals that were shown and say it's a new day. So that's my feeling, is that I think this can be a very good project. And we do need housing downtown. We're just struggling everywhere in this city for housing, so.
Thank you. Michael, you want to say a couple words?
Certainly. In all the years that I've known Dick Stauffer and Monty Miller, I know that they've added tremendous quality of style and some definition to the area that we call downtown, Coeur Lane, and I will trust that that will continue into this project or any other project down the line. I think that they are wise to understand, and they've demonstrated their wisdom in listening to all of you who've been here tonight to give them an earful of information and opinion and thoughts. But at the same time, I'm going to be in support of this just because I also understand that they live here and they're going to want to see something successful happen as a result. So I'm going to count on that to be the case, but I also know there's going to be a lot of good discussion. This won't be a quick decision on their part either, so I'm looking forward to the continued development of this.
Okay. Thank you for that. In any decisions, there's going to be people that are going to agree and not agree, be happy and not happy. Even though I cannot vote on this, because I'm the chairperson, I'm in support of this. Only because of the density is there. The density can support what's there, the parking. So I'm not going to repeat everything everyone has said so far on the commission. I agree with what they said in support of this. So I will call for someone to make a motion.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Go ahead. Thank you.
You're welcome. This matter, having come before the Planning Commission on July 10th, 2018, and there being present a person requesting approval of item SP 818 and R34 densities, increased special use permit in the R17 zoning district. The applicant is Annalise Miller. The location is 623 East Wallace Avenue. I would urge that we adopt the findings B1 through B7 as justification for the decision. B8, pursuant to section 1709-220, special use permit criteria, special use permit may be approved only if the proposal conforms to all the following criteria to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. B8A, the proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan as follows, and I would cite objective 1.12, community design, which supports the enhancement of existing urbanized areas and discourage sprawl. Objective 1.14, efficiency. Objective 3.01, managed growth. Objective 3.16, capital improvements. And objective 3.05, neighborhoods. B8B, the design and planning of the site is compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on the adjacent property. This is based on the staff report. B8C, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. This is based on the applicant testimony, the staff report, that transportation is adequate and that water and sewer are certainly available, again, per the staff report. So the conclusion decision, the Planning Commission pursuant to the aforementioned finds that for a special use permit as described in the application should be approved with the following special conditions. And should I read them?
On this one?
Or just number them? Yes, we would, the special conditions are 1 through 6.
Second.
I have a first by Rumpler, a second by Ingalls. Shannon, roll call, please.
Fleming.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Mandel.
Yes.
Lutrip.
No, and you heard my reasoning, including objective 301 and 305, which was read. I don't believe that meets it.
Rumpler.
Sorry?
Rumpler?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Okay, SP-8-18 is approved. I call for a motion to
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to adjourn. Thank you very much.